business, so it would be right after town manager updates on 7C.
Okay. Anybody on the board disagreeing with that suggestion?
No,
Again,
Mr. Chairman.
Dan, okay, I don't see anything, and obviously
all
I'll just Dan to say something, because obviously you're not on video. So thank you. That's agreeable, Mr. Tierney. So that sounds great. Move ahead with those changes. Okay. Don, I don't have the agenda printed, so yeah, if you could do that. Okay, thank you. Just so I can read that. Okay, that's section 4. I'm sorry, was there something, Andy?
No, I was gonna help you in.
Oh, thank you. To read that, I don't have that parcel memorized. So public comment is section 4. The section of the agenda is reserved for persons in attendance who wish to briefly address the Board of Selectmen. The board requests that a person's comments be limited to a single period lasting 3 minutes or less. While the board respects the right of the public to provide comment, this time is not intended for open discussion or board response. Residents who wish to request a dialogue should make arrangements to do so through the town manager's office or with me directly. And persons wishing to comment should type comment if you're dialing in remotely and your name in the chat box, and you will be recognized at the appropriate time. So Donna, I turn it over to you to recognize public comment at this point.
Online, we have Nikki Collins, who would like to make a public comment.
Great. Go ahead, Nikki. Thank you for joining us.
Hi there. Typically, I prepare for this meeting, but we have some personal issues going on in our house tonight. So I'll be brief, and then I have to jump off, and I won't be able to stick around for the vote later, which I do hope is unanimous this time. This is our 3rd year where the Pride Proclamation will be brought forth by Tiffany and now Claudia, and just being a mom. And I was reflecting on kind of my experiences in my life. And I grew up in a town, East Windsor, not too dissimilar from Hebron, very rural, very white, very Christian, and rather stuck in our ways. And I happened to have, she did just join me, I happened to have this human of my own join our lives in 2007, and has taught me a lot about compassion and caring about people in our community. And she has earned the title that my mom always gave me of a bleeding heart. And she really is. And empathy and compassion and caring about people really are at the root of ourselves and our relationships. And we hope that it is at the root of a lot of people in our community. So Grace, when she was in preschool, told me that she was going to marry the little girl in her preschool. And I said, well, I wonder if the little girl wants to marry you and what her parents will think about it. And it was kind of a cute little joke back then. Turns out that little girl is also in the LGBTQ community these days. And Grace has taught me that using the word queer is not a bad word anymore. Grace identifies, stop me if you need me to. Grace identifies as queer sexual, word I never heard of. I never heard of the word cisgender. I never heard of the word transgender, and all of these different things that I think we're all learning about. And it really is hard from watching both of my children, 2 teenagers growing up, trying to figure out which box they fit in when they know they don't fit in one or the other. They fit somewhere in between, and watching the struggle of my children and other children and other adults that I've met along the way just shows how powerful something like a Pride Proclamation can be. So we're grateful that you're bringing it up again. We're hoping that you see the compassion and how important this is to people. These things can bring out the angry people. We see that. But when Grace had us start Small Town Pride 2 years ago, she came home and I was overworked and overcommitted. And she said, "Mom, we don't have anything like this. I can't go to my own high school. I have to go to a different high school because of who I am. And I need to feel connected to my community." In that, we've made some really great friends. We've learned a lot. We've made some great community. And what we've learned is that most of Hebron is actually open to this. And it was surprising to me. last year at our Pride event in June. We only had 2 events. Somebody put flyers on a car during our event, and one person gave the middle finger to my daughter and said some less than friendly words to her. She smiled and waved because that's our mission, is compassion, regardless of how other people are doing, because we don't want to go down that low as other people go. So this year we're having our second Pride event. We have been adopted by code. We're feeling the love. We're feeling the community. People are constantly thanking us for something that I thought was smaller, or that I didn't know about as much when I was growing up. And I'm grateful for Claudia and Tiffany bringing this forward. Peter, I know you've voted for this in the past few years, and I'm hoping that the other remaining members will be able to, Keith and Dan will vote for it this year, so that we can finally have a unanimous decision for the Pride Proclamation.
Well, thank you, Nikki. Thank you for taking the time to share your personal story of you and your family. Well, we appreciate that. And just, I know we're familiar with you, but just for the record, could you just please state your address? So we like to do that.
I will not state my address due to the damage, but I am a Hebron resident.
Okay.
And I'm sure if someone really wants to look it up, but it is an unsafe environment to share our address.
I wasn't thinking about that. I was just thinking about protocol. So that's fine. You don't have to share that. So thank you again for sharing your personal story with us. And Donna, other public comment.
We have a public comment. If you could come up here so
Of course.
the camera can.
Right on the X.
Right.
All right. Hello, I'm Ethan Stone, 13 Church Street. I'm running for the Planning and Zoning Commission. I noticed on the agenda, it says that I have to be registered in Hebron. I double checked. Donna, thank you so much for your help. Double checked. I am in fact just registered, just to clear up the record on that. And then beyond that, I just want to say I'm excited and grateful for the opportunity to throw my hat in the ring after seeing the great work that Planning and Zoning's been doing, as I've attended the last couple meetings and familiarized myself with their work. And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is your mom a teacher in Hebron?
Oh, no, my mom's a teacher in Wyndham.
In Wyndham.
Yeah.
Any
Thank
other
you.
public
Yeah.
present?
Sorry.
Okay, I do have a letter from Frank Zitkus that he asked to be read into the record at this point in the meeting. He was unable to attend. So hello, this is Frank Zitkus, longtime member and current chair of the Planning and Zoning Commission. I wish to convey several observations pertaining to Mr. Ethan Stone's interest in serving on the PZC. As per BOS protocol, Mr. Stone has attended the past several lengthy PZC meetings, which have included numerous public hearings, including applications and deliberations on the now finalized Plan of Conservation and Development, a zone change application, zoning regulation amendments, special permit and site plan applications, a subdivision application, and various workshop topics of interest and concern to the community. PZC has been very busy of late, and attendance at these several meetings has provided Mr. Stone with a fairly complete range of activities and sense of time commitment necessary to be an effective commission member. In addition to the above protocol, attending PZC meetings, Mr. Stone has reached out to me, and we have had a few PZC related conversations as well. Second protocol. I met with Ethan at Maple Fest, and his enthusiasm to serve the town is clearly evident when speaking with him at the event and subsequently. Being a young professional business owner residing within the mixed-use Hebron Green District, Ethan would bring a youthful perspective to the commission, which is lacking if appointed. Respectfully submitted, Frank Zitkus, Chair, Hebron PZC.
Thank you for that. That's it. Okay. Mr. Tierney, section 5 on the agenda, which is good to know, special recognition.
Yeah, so in lieu of the budget, the agenda, and the amount of presentations we have tonight, we do not have any good to know for tonight's meeting. We can go right into the 3 proclamations. 2 of them are for Eagle Scouts, Hebron's been known to have a lot of people gain the rank of Eagle Scout, and that's, I know personally from my nephew. And that's not a very easy thing to obtain, so it's always been an honor of this board to recognize that with honor. That's going to follow you throughout your career. And I do a lot of resume reviews for people that work for the town of Hebron, and that's the first thing that jumps out. If somebody's an Eagle Scout, you know they really are, committed and are going to be a good person, a good employee. So thank you, and I'll turn it back over to you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I'll take the first one, and proud to take the first one. The Town of Hebron proclamation honoring Colin Baker, obtaining the rank of Eagle Scout within Scouts BSA Troop 28. Whereas Colin Baker has been a scout for the past 7 years and has attained the rank of Eagle Scout, and whereas Colin's commitment to the Scouts BSA has been evidenced by his diligence and selfless performance of community service, and by moving through the ranks of his troop to serve as Junior Assistant Scoutmaster. And whereas Colin's commitment to the Scouts BSA has been evidenced by earning 23 merit badges in automotive, camping, canoeing, citizenship, communication, personal fitness, rifle shooting, swimming, sustainability, and space exploration, to name a few. And whereas Colin was presented with the National Outdoor Camping Award, and whereas Colin's sincere concern for his community was illustrated by his Eagle Project, where Colin restored and improved an outdoor prayer area at St. Peter's Church. He cleaned benches, cleared the ground of the area, the overgrown trails that lead into it, and the ground behind the area to expand the area. And whereas Colin presently is a senior at Ram High School and participates in varsity soccer, varsity track and field, and ultimate frisbee. And whereas Colin is currently a member of the Ram High School Leo's Club, Pep Band Club, and Wind Ensemble, he is also a National Honor Society member, National Music Honor Society member, and he has been an honor roll student at Ram all 4 years. And whereas Colin's work experience includes Holiday Hill Day Camp and Recreation Center in Mansfield, Connecticut, where he has held the position of camp counselor, group leader, swim instructor, lifeguard, and event supervisor. Now, therefore, we, the Hebron Board of Selectmen, in recognition of Colin's many years of achievement, dedication, and leadership in the Scouts BSA in our community, hereby designate June 8th, 2024 as, quote, Colin Baker Day, and express on behalf of the town of Hebron our sincere congratulations and admiration for his accomplishments. And obviously, yes, exactly. Need the golf clap. But, and yeah, does any board member wish to comment on this?
I have this back so Selectmen can sign it, but you can face it
Yeah.
towards the camera.
We don't have to vote. We can you just come to the town and obviously sign at your convenience. Does anyone have anything they wish to add before we move on? I think the proclamation speaks for itself. Wonderful job, Colin, and we're very happy to recognize you and your commitment to our community and to being a wonderful citizen. So thank you very much for your contributions, Mr. Tierney.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Next, we have another honored troop Eagle Scout proclamation for Joshua Weeks. Joshua?
Yeah, that's what it's.
We'll get this signed and we'll get it together.
Okay. Would someone else like to, on the board, like to read this to honor Joshua?
Yeah, I can take care of it for you.
Okay, thank you very much, Keith.
Town of Hebron proclamation honoring Joshua Weirs for attaining the rank of Eagle within Scouts BSA Troop 28. Whereas Joshua Weirs has been a scout for the past 7 years and has attained the rank of Eagle Scout, and whereas Joshua's commitment to the Scouts BSA has been evidenced by his diligence and selfless performance of community service, and by moving through the ranks of his troop to serve as Assistant Senior Patrol Leader, and whereas Joshua's commitment to the Scouts BSA has been evidenced by earning 25 merit badges in archery, automotive, camping, canoeing, citizenship, communication, fire safety, first aid, personal fitness, rifle shooting, swimming, sustainability, and space exploration, to name a few. Joshua was presented with the National Outdoor Award for Camping, Silver and Gold. And whereas Joshua's sincere concern for his community was illustrated by his Eagle Project, where Joshua installed 8 weather-resistant signs depicting the history, geology, and wildlife at Camp High Hody, which is part of the Hartford Neighborhood Center, where inner-city children are introduced to nature and the outdoors. And whereas Joshua has participated in many Eagle Scout projects, including collecting and sorting food for the Hebron Interfaith Human Services, he has also volunteered at My Sister's Place in Hartford, Connecticut, and worked as a junior counselor at Star Hill in Tallinn, Connecticut. And whereas Joshua presently is a senior at Ram High School and is a member of the boys varsity football and boys varsity lacrosse, where he has been co-captain for both teams. And whereas Joshua's work experience includes being a line chef at Village Green Pizza in Marlborough, Connecticut, now therefore, we, the Hebron Board of Selectmen, in recognition of Joshua's many years of achievements, dedication, and leadership in the Scouts BSA and in our community, hereby designate June 8th, 2024 as Joshua Weir's Day and express on behalf of the town of Hebron our sincere congratulations and admiration for his accomplishments.
Wonderful accomplishment, and it is amazing. And Andy, you're right. We've had the pleasure of recognizing so many young people with
Congratulations.
Thank you.
with these awards, and it's amazing what they're able to accomplish, and they're inspirational. And so, yes, congratulations to both Colin and Joshua for their accomplishments, and it's a pleasure to be able to read these proclamations. Thank you. And Mr. Tierney, that moves us to our next proclamation.
Yes, I think Claudia, would you
Sure can.
be the one to read
All
it?
right. The town of Hebron observes Pride Month, June 2024, whereas the town of Hebron recognizes the month of June as Pride Month, commemorating the historic Stonewall riots of 1969, which sparked the modern LGBTQ+ civil rights movement. And whereas Pride Month serves as an opportunity to celebrate the contributions and achievements of lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer questioning individuals in our community and beyond. And whereas Hebron observes June as a time to honor the LGBTQ+ community and reflect upon the important contributions of the LGBTQ+ residents to the town and the United States as a whole. And whereas the town of Hebron recognizes and values the diversity of its residents, promoting inclusivity, equality, and respect for all individuals. And whereas by acknowledging Pride Month, we affirm our commitment to fostering a welcoming and supportive town free from discrimination and prejudice, where all of our residents can live, work, and thrive. And whereas we remain vigilant against continued discrimination against LGBTQ+ community. And whereas we affirm our support for our LGBTQ+ residents and commend the efforts of the local LGBTQ+ organizations, activists, allies, and community members who work tirelessly to advance the rights and well-being of LGBTQ+ individuals in our town. Now, therefore, we, the Hebron Board of Selectmen, hereby proclaim June 2024 as Pride Month. We encourage all residents to join us in reflecting on the progress made while we endeavor to continue building a future of inclusiveness and acceptance for all.
Thank you so much, Claudia, and thank you for bringing that forward. Mr. Tierney?
Thank you. Okay, next on the agenda is appointments and resignations. And under A, we have a Planning and Zoning Commission appointment. Are the candidates for that Planning and Zoning Commission? I know one is here. Who is there? The 3 are all here? Okay. The 3 are in attendance, Mr. Chairman.
Okay,
Would you like to proceed?
okay. I'm sorry.
So to read it, the following individuals have expressed interest in serving on the Planning and Zoning Commission to fill the vacancy created by Natalie Wood's resignation. Chris Sear, R, is a Republican. Brandon, I apologize if I mispronounce your name. Mansaku and Ethan Stone, I believe are all R's. Correspondent is attached, also attaches a letter to endorse from Mr. Manasuku from the Republican Town Committee, and then you heard from the chairman of the Planning and Zoning Commission under public comment. And then there's a proposed motion if if you so move.
Okay, before we move the motion, I think, Dan, you wanted to, I heard you were.
Yeah.
Okay, go
I'd
ahead.
like to jump in if I could, Dan Larson. Realizing we did have one person that came before the HRTC. I did not know until I saw this, our agenda, that there were two other people who are both Republicans that are interested in this position. And I personally feel that since there is nothing pressing that the P&Z has to have a full slate at this time, I would like to see the HRTC properly vet the all three people together and then come back with a recommendation. I think it would only be fair for the other two people, and I think it would be best for the town if we were to put this off for a couple of weeks. And as I say, let the HRTC go through the vetting process and verify if they want to stay with the individual that they're putting forward, fine. Or they may want to change, knowing that we actually have a number of people to choose from.
Mr. Tierney, could you just confirm where we are with, I know there was a late registration. Is everyone registered as a voter in the town?
The next meeting is the 20th, so that would be like 2 weeks out. As far as the candidates go, I think somebody filled out their card yesterday, but I'm not sure it's been processed with the state as of before this meeting. I can't be positive of that. Mr. Richmond, his wife went to the hospital today, so he was busy. He's a registered voter. So I don't know if it in fact has been sent to the state and validated yet. So I think with that being said, without having that confirmation, the gentleman here, did you just register your card yesterday?
It was yesterday morning.
Yeah, unfortunately, they're part-time.
The next day.
Yeah, they're part-time, so I don't know if that got submitted as of when I left for 5:30. It hadn't been today, so, I mean, Matt, you're the planner, so is there anything pressing for planning and zoning if this appointment was pushed out for 2 weeks?
No, fortunately, we have two alternates that are regular attenders that can be seated when necessary.
I'll leave it up to the board of selectmen.
I just have a question, just for sake of efficiency and honoring people's time for coming out tonight. Dan, what do you see as, you said you wanted to vet the Republicans?
We are relying on a single individual who the RTC is putting forward, which is fine, and that's, per protocol. But if there are two other Rs that are also interested in the position, I think it behooves the RTC to properly vet all three individuals. And if somebody actually just filled out their paperwork yesterday, I'm a little concerned with that also. I don't want to rush into something and then say, oh my God, what have we done? I'd rather push it off and have people say, oh, they didn't make a decision, than rush into something and say, oh, look at the decision they made.
Okay, I'm just a little confused because I thought there was already an endorsement.
Yeah, but I don't think the RTC knew that there was two other Republican candidates who were interested in the position. So no one else actually was discussed or brought before the membership, is what I'm
Tiffany
saying.
has a-
Okay,
Go ahead, Tiffany. Let's hear from Tiffany.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and please bear with me with my voice today. The issue to me is not if the RTC has done its due diligence. It's really not incumbent on the Board of Selectmen to push something like that back to a town committee. It's really incumbent on the town committee to fulfill their role in vetting candidates. But what I will say is that I echo Dan's concern that paperwork was just filed yesterday morning, and I do have a strong belief that you should be registered to vote before you come before the board to be considered for appointment. So I would just want to be on the record as saying, I would not support pushing this off because we want to give the RTC time. That's not really it's not really our job to do. But I would be on board with pushing this off because we want to ensure all the paperwork is in place. Thank you.
Thank you. Keith, do you have anything you'd like to add? Don't feel pressure, but I just give you an opportunity if you want to add anything.
No, I mean, I may as well weigh in. I agree with Tiffany's viewpoint. I mean, you know, not everyone is always aware of the fact that the different town committees, whether it's the Democratic town committee or the Republican town committee, is responsible for vetting and making sure that people are available for elected positions versus appointed positions. And even though this is a Board of Selectmen appointment, it is an appointment to an elected position, which this person, when that term comes up, would have to either become part of the election process or at that point just stop being a member of planning and zoning. So, you know, I think it would behoove all of the individuals to make contact with the town committee, because I see Dan's point of only one was considered, but that may just have been because of the other two not being fully informed of you know, proper political process in town. In addition to that, I completely see Tiffany's concern with, you know, we have sometimes as part of being a small town and having positions that are part-time or not fully staffed with an abundance of employees. Sometimes paperwork, which should be effective quickly, falls through the cracks. You know, we have same day registration for voting, so it does concern me that we would consider or that we would not consider a candidate who submitted paperwork you know, in advance, even if in advance is only a day. So I agree with putting it off for both of those reasons. I actually had noticed in the audience today is the RTC chairman. So I hope that the other applicants could possibly make a connection there and get some idea of what happens beyond an appointment as it relates to elections in small towns. And, you know, I don't know if at this point the RTC can change its recommendation, but that's something that, again, to Tiffany's point, that's not our concern. That's something that the RTC is going to have to figure out on their own. But yes, I'm in favor of postponing it until the 20th.
Thank you, Keith. And yeah, I think I'm focused probably most specifically on making sure that procedurally the candidates are all registered in Hebron. And if that technically isn't the case, for whatever reason, with the extenuating circumstances that were noted for whatever reason, and there's no pressing matter, I think that alone probably justifies delaying it. And the other, I guess there's differing opinions on the other. I mean, you don't have to come before the RTC. So, but it's really, to me, let's procedurally be correct on this. If it's not 100%, if it's not accurate, we know it's not accurate yet, then there's no reason not to delay it. Now, with that said, so I think we'll have consensus that delaying it is not going to, we can delay it. And so, however, because we have all three people here, and this will come before us very quickly, I am open, if the rest of the board agrees, if these gentlemen would like to provide some additional commentary or address the board, and obviously give us even more time to sort of contemplate their candidacy. They're welcome to do that, or they're welcome to join us in 2 weeks when we'll be procedurally ready to move forward. It's totally up, but you're here. So at least if you'd like, if the board agrees, I'm fine with any one of you or all three of you taking this as an opportunity to present yourself before the board. But please don't feel obligated, but it's an opportunity if you wish to proceed. So the way I think we have it listed here, we have Chris, and I apologize, I don't see everybody on my screen, but if Chris is here, which I think Andy said he was, if you'd like to say something, you're welcome. I'll give you that first opportunity.
Chris Sear, 49 Scarborough Road. Moved to Hebron about 5.5 years ago with my wife and 3 kids. I am a business owner. in Manchester. I'm an electrical contractor. I have about 50 employees between my 3 businesses. And so I've been in construction for 20 years. It's my world. I'm much more comfortable in a trench than I am here, to be honest with you, but I think I could bring a lot to this town, especially that I have a vested interest. My youngest is 7. We're not going anywhere. And I'd like to be a part of the way this community looks in 20, 30 years.
Are you also a registered Republican?
Thank you, and thank you for coming before us. And I know you're not comfortable, but yeah, we're all neighbors effectively as residents, and so thank you. And I'd like to thank all of you. You're busy. Clearly, you notice you're owning a business and businesses and a young family, but taking the time to volunteer for anything within the capacity of the Hebron town government and the boards and commissions is very much appreciated. So, regardless of the outcome for the 3 of you, only one can serve. I continue to encourage all those to look for ways to give back. And so thank you for stepping forward and being willing to give back to your community. So, and thank you for joining us tonight. Brendan, would you like to say anything?
Yeah, my name's Bernie Mansaku. My family's lived in Hebron for the last 4 years, and I've always had a desire to serve the public in some capacity in my local town. I actually lived in Norwich, so I ran for board of ed there, and recently moved back to Hebron with my background in real estate, whether that's as a broker and then working for 7-Eleven. I have a lot of experience with going through the town entitlement process and really understanding what Hebron is and the aesthetic that we're trying to keep. At the same time, we're looking to expand and grow the economy. So it's a fine line between the two of those. But yeah, besides that, I think my background in real estate really lends a hand to taking this position to help the public versus when I tried to run for the board of ed. I have more of a background in real estate to do this. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And I know,
You're also a registered Republican?
Yes.
I think Ethan, you addressed us during public comment, but I think if I recall.
I can give another brief, history like they did. I moved to Hebron last summer. I bought the Graves House in town center. So I'm very interested in the historical aspect and the aesthetic that we have cultivated here. Interested in preserving that. I come from actuarial, so like a finance, probabilistic, future-based background. So I'm also really concerned with, establishing businesses and taking a smart financial approach to Hebron's future. And beyond all of that, I mean, from the time I've been here and the people that I've connected with, I really deeply care about the community. Thank you.
Thank you. And we're very fortunate to have 3 people step forward for one position that generally we don't have that luxury, although it always makes it difficult to have to say no to 2. And that's unfortunately the role that we have sometimes, is making those decisions. And so thank you very much. And I apologize, but administratively, we're going to move this for the final decision to be at the next meeting, as I mentioned. And please feel comfortable that if you're not able to attend the next meeting, that will not in any way impact. I know I can speak for the board, the outcome of how we vote, because obviously you took the time to come tonight and articulate your feelings and express your desire to join the commission. So if you can attend next meeting, great. If you don't, please don't feel obligated. Again, we've benefited from you taking the time to speak tonight. So thank you very much. So Andy, if you can move that obviously to the next agenda under whole business or wherever you think it needs to sit. Thank you so much. And let's, Andy, I guess we move then to B.
Yes, Economic Development Commission resignation attached to the letter of resignation received from Neil Amway, resigning his position on the Economic Development Commission. And then there's proposed motion.
Would someone like to, Claudia, would you like to read the motion, please?
Let's see.
I'm sorry, if you're not ready, that's fine.
I'm on it. I can take care of it.
Okay.
I move that the Hebron Board of Selectmen accept the resignation of Neil Amwaki from the Economic Development Commission with regret and thanks for his years of service.
Any discussion? Okay, we'll move to a vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Those opposed, nay. Or if you wish to abstain, please note that as well. Keith?
Keith Bennett, aye.
Thank you. Dan?
Dan Larson, aye.
Thank you. Tiffany?
Tiffany Teely, aye.
You can just do thumbs up, Tiffany, if you're losing your voice, or thumbs down. I just feel so badly for your
No, it's
voice.
fine. I can't read any more long motions like y'all throw at me usually,
you're
but I can
you're
say aye and
Okay,
such.
okay.
Aye.
All right. No, I'm just sensitive to that. Peter Casper votes aye. No, I apologize. I'm talking to Tiffany. Claudia, did I ask for your vote? I apologize. Did I get you?
Claudia Riley, aye.
So I think I missed that. Okay. So that passed unanimously. Thank you very much. And thanks to Neil. I know Neil served for a number of years and has done so with distinction and really a great contribution. So we're sad to see him leave and just collectively on behalf of the town, thank him for his service. So thank you, Andy, for that.
Thank you, Mr. Town Manager. Ms. Hopper, who's with it today? Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So moving right along, got a lot of stuff on this agenda, so.
Yes, sir.
Town Manager's report.
Yep, right ahead.
We are looking to ratify the Parks and Rec Union contract. That'll be on the next agenda. There'll be a executive session, proposed executive session to have the Board of Selectmen review that. I'll have an overview of what we did there, and hopefully we can get that ratified. So that would be something to be completed. As everyone knows and should know, we've been working very diligently on the ARPA funds projects, the ARPA funding timeframes, and the update. So I hope everybody be presently pleased with the report later tonight. Region 8 Health Insurance met again today. We're not going to meet again until next September. We take the summers off, but we remain to be running well, which is always good news. Spent a lot of time with the Chatham Health District. We updated the personnel policies, which haven't been updated since 2013. So that was quite a task, but now completed. The Pendleton Drive pedestrian bridge is out to bid. So that's great news. That was a long time coming. And they also are starting the Route 66 and 316 intersection improvement project. The sidewalk, as you well know, has been completed on Wall Street. And we received notice that the Hebron Police Department has passed its accreditation and we are compliant. And there will be a ceremony celebrating that, which not resident, but Hebron Police Officer Mark Rivera will be attending for the town. And that's all I had, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Andy. Unless there's any questions from the board, that will move us to, with the adjustment, that'll move us to 9B on our agenda under new business, which is Economic Development Incentive Program General Discussion. So I'll turn it over to you, Mr. Tierney, to lead that.
Yeah, I made a mistake when I read it also. It's really actually item 9A.
Oh.
Which would be application for, it would be the application for the Economic Development Incentive Program for 459 Church Street LLC. Attaches a memo from Matthew Bordeaux, Town Planner, and recommendation from the Economic Development Commission regarding 459 Church Street. Mr. Bordeaux is here in attendance at this meeting to provide more information to respond to questions.
So not 9A, it's still 9C though, right? So it's A and C, just for me? Is it?
Yeah, 9A. Yeah. Three. That's what I missed one, so that was a confusion. Guess I need new glasses.
Okay, well,
Go ahead, Matt.
all right, Mr. Chair.
Yes,
Okay,
please go ahead.
thank you. Thank you to the board for considering moving us up. I know Michelle is a very busy woman and being part of the conversation, I'd like to, respect our time. Yeah, we have a couple of conversations that kind of flow into each other, but first of all, I want to start with a recommendation on the most recent application for the Economic Development Incentive Program that we received from 459 Church Street LLC. The application was received on April 15th, at which time we heard a brief presentation from the applicant, who was represented by gentleman Jason Dykes, who's a resident. And ultimately, after some conversation at the May 20th meeting, a recommendation was made unanimously by the EDC. I believe you received a motion, your package should have received a concept plan for the future use of the site as well as their application. So what's being proposed is the renovation and redevelopment of the historic Tertian Mill for yet to be determined, but will ultimately will be a mixed use scenario, because not in the terms of, or not in the sense of residential and commercial, but probably more than one use. It's a larger building. There's multiple opportunities for them to fit it out. And I'm going to use the term renovation, redevelopment, and restoration interchangeably. I just mean they're going to improve the site and try to make the most of what is an existing structure that is certainly a character defining feature in this town. Future optimization of the building and this site is dependent on water supply, either publicly supplied or subject to the approval of the Department of Public Health. That is yet to be determined. The site is subject to brownfield remediation. Several town administered assessment grants prior to my occupation here have facilitated a successful remediation grant recently upgraded in consideration of inflation. So that went from in the range of 260 or so to 370,000 it's going to take. And we're hoping that we make everything happen for what it's going to take to remediate that site. Thankfully, we have a good team with DECD can help us get there. Remediation is set to commence this construction season, assuming things go smoothly with the final design work that's necessary. Based on the developer's proposal, the anticipated costs of redevelopment would be in the vicinity of $670,000. That could translate to approximately, excuse me, I jumped ahead. After speaking with the Hebron's town assessor, that based on their proposal, the assessed value would be between $700,000 and $850,000, which does not include the paved parking area, because we're not sure at this time what the remediation of this site is going to require. Oftentimes when we have a brownfield remediation program, you have to cap the entire site, or the site that has the potential to have human conflict or interaction. So assuming that we can excavate the necessary material, remove it from the site, a clean slate, we can develop the site itself accordingly, that assessed value could increase. So utilizing the town's active mill rate, that could yield in the vicinity of a $20,000 tax bill annually on real property, not on personal property or business related property or anything like that. So in consideration of this proposal and this application, the Economic Development Commission took into consideration several factors. One is the role that the Tertian Mill has in defining the character of the Amson Village District. So to elaborate a little bit, I don't know the exact history of the district, but as it's represented on the Hebron zoning map and in the plan of conservation and development, this is an area where we hope to redevelop something of the mixed use, semi-industrial, historical character of the district. Tertian Mill certainly being the defining feature in that district. So though that goal specifically to renovate and restore the Tertian Mill is noted both in the 2014 and 2024 plan of conservation and development. They also took into consideration a lack of public water supply that would potentially increase upfront costs in permitting, the installation of potentially a public water supply, as well as the risk that the public water supply is not suitable for the future potential use. So not only that, but one of the concerns that we hope to resolve is, does that water supply have a limitation or make a limitation on the future occupation of that site, at least in the near term. Ultimately, the goal I think we all would like to see is a public water supply be available to that site. Certainly, we're working towards that end. The goal as the developer would like to see it is to have a destination use, brewery, restaurant use, something that attracts the public, something that is notable in the region, certainly something that taps into the neighborhood, the Amston Lake neighborhood, and also helps to stimulate the economic development potential that is desired adjacent to the airline trail, all part of the 12-town airline trail master plan. We also noted that they're undertaking a historic restoration project, and we know that more than likely the cost to renovate a historic structure is actually more burdensome or cumbersome than it is to do new construction. So there is an assumption of the fulfillment of a community's desire to see a structure like this renovated and return to useful contributions to the town. We also know that the site has some limitations or some constraints in the form of in the wetlands and in proximity to a flood zone. So there are going to be some permitting hurdles that are associated with those uses, not just locally with in the wetlands permit process, but with Department of Public Health, Department of Energy and Environmental Protection, DECD, and the fulfillment of our brownfield remediation grant requirements, and also the location, which has its pros and cons on a state route. There come requirements associated with that. And then finally, I alluded to this earlier, its connection to the airline trail. So it's been a goal of not just the town of Hebrons, but also the 12-town region that makes up the members through which the airline trail traverses, to see the airline trail be an economic driver. And this is a very good opportunity for a project that, again, would be maybe a stop on the route in immediately adjacent to the trail. So ultimately, with those thoughts considered, or those ideas considered, EDC made a recommendation. The recommendation was that the board consider a term of 8 years with at least 2 years of relief from real property taxes at 100%. That's the recommendation that is being presented. Certainly, if you have some thoughts, we want to hear those, and ultimately the decision is in the hand of the Board of Selectmen. You're probably aware of the process, but when an applicant comes to myself that I think is a project that fits what the community's vision is, and I know that there's some legwork to get there, it is when I will take kind of a judgment call or make a judgment call and provide the information that we have in a sense program. In this case, they were seeking the assistance, and they make an application to the Economic Development Commission, who then makes a recommendation to the Board of Selectmen, and that decision ultimately rests in your hands. So I have with the chairperson of the Economic Development Commission, Michelle Nicholson, here with us. If there's any questions, and of course, I'll be here to help you as well. And ultimately, if the board wants to make decisions tonight, that's fantastic. I believe in making the development approval process as expeditious as possible, but this considering the fact that there is a remediation project underway is not imminent. So if the commission needs a little time to think about it, I think that's.
Well, thank you, Matt, and obviously thank you, Michelle, for joining us. So let's open it up for board discussion. Tiffany, would you like to start? If you have something you'd like to, questions or comments you'd like to make?
I'll hang back for now. I think just a broader comment I can make to start the conversation is that this property has been vacant for a long time. It has been since I've lived here, and I, haven't been here as long as others. And so I think if someone's willing to come in and develop it and make it a destination property, I think that's something we should seriously consider. But I'll wait to hear from my
Okay.
fellow board members and see if I have anything else. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, sure. Claudia, would you like to add something, comments, or it's all up to you?
Yeah, I'm gonna start with a question, water. So how does the common CDC play? It's pretty close, the two areas. How does their work as far as water goes? How will that affect or benefit or not benefit this particular project?
So there's a lot to the answer to that question.
Yeah.
But the work that Common CDC is conducting is located in the Hebron Center Water Supply District.
Mhm.
I think that if we were to able to make provide for a public water supply to the Tertian Mill project, it would either come from the Amston Village. I'm not sure exactly, either Amston Village or Amston Lake Water Supply. That public water supply, also owned and operated by Connecticut Water. But I think more realistically, it had been the goal of the communities and the understanding of the communities for a long time that the Raymond Marsh aquifer was going to be the future water supply to support increased development or future development in the Hebron Center district. And the idea was that there would be a connection made between the two supplies. So more realistically is if we can make that supply and that connection in the future, assuming that there is in fact the supply we need in the Amston Village area that warrants the investment in the connection, they would be on that route.
Mhm.
I think that's probably the more realistic path. And of course, we're working with a consultant now to further determine or further vet the potential of that supply. Once upon a time, we actually did have some very strong political support for that interconnection,
Yeah.
which is a multi-million-dollar project up Route 85. No small task on a state route, but that was ultimately the goal. Unfortunately, what this Common CDC is doing now is going to be out of reach for anyone subtly on Church Street outside of the Hebron Center's supply.
And where's that lineation between the two districts?
It's actually north of the school. I think it's probably right at 60 Church Street. It doesn't even go to the school. The school has their own well, so it would be northerly of 60 Church Street.
Gotcha.
Northerly and
Mhm.
easterly, because that foreign property and everything like that would be in that supply area.
And then my other question was about brownfields remediation, things of that ilk. So you're saying there's already some work commencing to address that issue or looking at it?
Yeah, so
Can you expand a little bit on that?
yeah, the town planning committee, planning commission, and well, specifically, I think the planner for many years has worked with some groups. I think there was a Brownfield Action Committee made up of different members of different boards and commissions, again, before my time, but they were looking at how to remediate some of the brownfields in town. One was 459 Church Street, one was 501 Church Street, which are town owned. Those typically now assessment grants can be made that provide phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, or basically action plans for how to remediate a site. But when it comes to actual remediation, DCD is reluctant to commit additional remediation funds until there's a development partner. In this case, we have a development partner. With 501 Church Street, we had a concept and we had an interested party. It never came to fruition. So that's still something that's on the radar, I'm sure, because we have a pretty strong application, and actually the remediation at that site is going to be even more costly than it will be at 459, if you can believe that, because it's a rather small site. But because we have a development partner in place, DECD is happy to see something like this come to fruition.
Okay. And just my general comment is, I am in support of the project. Anything we can do to move these this type of economic development to town, I'm all for it.
There we go. Thank you, Claudia. Mr. Pettit, would you like to provide any comments, questions?
My comments are pretty much, I mean, I am in support of it. Obviously, anything to remediate Brownsfields in our community is something that I would want to pursue. But I do want to temper that with the fact that I don't want us to continue to use, economic incentive plans with each one seeming to get larger and larger than the previous one. I understand their desire, for a 2 and 8 resolution. I don't necessarily know if I would support extending out to 8 because the next one's going to be 10, and then the next one's going to be 12, and the next one's going to be 15. I think that we would be, most companies are either successful or not in the first couple years. And if they're able to make things work with 100%, reduction in real estate, or even if we threw in a small incentive to include personal property tax exclusions for those, I'm fine with that. But at that point, it needs to start ramping up to full. And I would be more interested in having us maintain those guardrails of 5 years. So, I would be acceptable to, if someone said that they were going to go with 100, 75, 50, 25, I could be on board with that. Like, no problem. Even if we wanted to throw in a little bit more incentive with, abating personal property tax for 2 years. That's a great incentive, especially for an up and coming business that they don't have to worry about, because for businesses that can be a significant, price tag. But I don't think that we should keep putting this obligation further and further out. I mean, at that point, I'm not just making a decision for my board of selectmen and for the next board of selectmen, but now I'm talking about maybe 2 boards out. I hesitate to do that.
If you don't mind, can I just respond with a couple of thoughts?
Please.
Appreciate that. And in this case, I think that the EDC was pretty considerate of that. Just to alleviate some of your concerns. So the ability for the municipality to even entertain the program, the idea of an incentive comes from state statute. State statute limits the duration of such an incentive to 10 years. So we would never be able to exceed that. The other thought is, I think you're right and this was part of what the EDC was thinking, that those first couple of years are critical, right? And they are certainly going to be the most cumbersome in terms of offsetting the cost it took to get the site ready to go, occupy the space. So you're right. Those front-loaded years are the years that I think will have the most impact and hopefully pave the way for success for that business. So appreciate that comment. I think we have new members, right? We have new members on this board. We have new members in the Economic Development Commission. I'm a new planner. I mean, I've facilitated this program in other communities. And it's always been kind of like, what's the balance? What's the middle ground? What's appropriate? When we think about what's coming down the pike and where we might entertain future applications, I think we're going to see substantially greenfield sites, right? So those are going to be a little bit easier to start. It's going to be new construction. You're going to have raw land to work with. That's not the burden that these folks are undertaking. So I think that's part of the reason why the EDC was thinking along these lines and maybe a longer duration. But if the duration is part of the concern, and I'm sure you're not the only one that feels that kind of way, I think probably the more emphasis ought to be on front loading the relief, at least in those first couple of years. And I was trying to think about, okay, if it's 8 years and the recommendation is 2 years at 100%, and what do you do with those next 6? Like, how do you play that math? Your description is a good idea. how to taper off. So it just makes, just to make things easy.
Even though
No,
I'm not,
can you?
I know I haven't stood up yet, but just, okay, so hi, I'm Sean. So part of our thought process too, and to your point, right? So 10 years is actually the max, so it can't go up from there. And I think as an EDC, when we're looking at the available commercial real estate that we have in Hebron, and we look at the projects that align best with the Hebron plan and the picture that we have for the town and the business structure within the town. When we looked at a 10-year maximum, and then we looked at the value of this project in that picture, I think our thought process is kind of like, well, if not for this, for what? Because this is huge, right? This project is, you're talking about multiple businesses. You're talking about a destination that's going to bring people in to an area of town that doesn't see a lot of commercial traffic. So I think when you look at the 8 years and think of it as like, well, that's a big number. It is a big number, and it probably should be, because this is probably one of the more valuable projects that the town has seen come across its doorstep. We haven't had a ton of businesses come into town. We haven't had a ton of development for the town. This has been an eyesore for way longer than I've lived here. And I think from the EDC perspective, we felt like assigning an 8-year term was appropriate because this is a really big deal. So the only thing I could see being bigger than this space would be, down by like the CVS area, like those large open areas, right? But as far as viable commercial real estate, this is about as big as it gets. So an 8-year term for us felt appropriate for this.
I agree with the importance of the site. However, my response to both of your comments is that I also know that the state is involved, and DECB has gigantic pockets. And not only do they have gigantic pockets, but they don't always look to see who's picking stuff out of them. They have a habit of really, really badly overfunding things. So we're talking about something where this is a great opportunity for us to get more bang for our buck because the state is kicking stuff in. But if we're getting more bang for our buck from the state, then as the town, I don't feel that extra incentive, because so what? I'm going to give extra as the town, but I also know on the other hand, you're getting a heck of a handout from the state. So you're going to have your cake and eat it too. I don't think that the rest of the residents of Hebron would appreciate all that cake. But that's my personal opinion.
Thank you, Keith. Great. Let's get your thoughts on the table. I'll add some as well, and then we'll go round 2 and get other. And if my sick colleague wants to jump in again, we'll look to her as well. So Dan, why don't you go?
Okay. Being involved with Church Run Mill even prior to the previous owner, the building was bought at auction. We, the town, through our then town planner and town staff, were able to get a brownstone or brownfields remediation grant. I want to say 350,000, whatever, for the potential cleanup of that property. I am glad to see that things are finally moving forward. I was expecting things to start moving forward actually, 2 years prior to this. I agree with Keith. I can go 5 years. I can do a couple years tax exempt while they get themselves up and established. But I think the taxpayers, and I even got, negative feedback when we gave Coldbrook the break we gave Coldbrook. And I think it was the right decision. I think it's proven that it was the right decision, but there were people even back then that get very upset, saying that, everybody's getting a free ride, yet we as the taxpayers who've been here for, whatever long period of time are getting nothing. So we got to kind of balance both of those ends. As for water, I personally feel Connecticut Water has a responsibility. They are by state statute, the only game in town. There is a water main on North Pond Road, although I believe it is undersized for fire protection, but there is one that could be continued down the hill. I'm not quite sure how far it goes down, but there are fire hydrants on North Pond. And then there also that water line comes up 85. Again, I'm not sure how far it comes out of Hampton Village Center. But, you know, I think Connecticut Water has some skin in this game, and somehow legislatively they need to be held responsible for some of their obligations to the town of Hebron.
Okay, thank you, Dan. Just so everyone's been kind enough to weigh in, I'll just provide my comments as well. First of all, I don't think there's any disagreement that this is a wonderful project. So, I mean, let's not get distracted with that, with the dialogue. It's really just trying to, how do we support it within the context of a bigger picture, as Keith mentioned. I think about it from the perspective of optics to some degree. The town's residents, for the most part, one of the biggest concerns is the constant raising of taxes for all. They vote, they raise the taxes because we have to, but the expense of living in town, and the idea that they would see a benefit ultimately on the impact on their taxes with further business development. And so the idea, at least from an optics perspective, because I don't want to not support this, and I mean, I do support it, but the idea of an 8-year term just on the surface, to me, I'm uncomfortable with. And so my thoughts are that, can we structure something within 5 years? That would be consistent with what we did at Colebrook. Colebrook had extenuating circumstances, agree with them or not, that led to the approach that the town took. And so here's another situation where there are clearly circumstances that suggest that we should be supporting this venture. However, Colebrook was a 5-year deal. I'm comfortable with 5 years. And then I would ask Matt and Michelle, is there a way to structure it that provides the kind of impact you're looking for, but in a shorter period of time? And I think Keith suggested, hey, maybe there's a different way to think about it. You talked about the $20,000 annual taxes with the real property, but then not the business property. So maybe there's other ways to do that. And I personally would be listening and interested in supporting something along the lines of a 5-year proposal, even though I understand Michelle's point is, if we're going to support something, this is what we should support. But I think to the community, I think an 8-year term, regardless of the validity of it, I'd have a difficult time with that time period, at least explaining that. Or 5 years, I think there'd be some consistency with how we think about it. And then the challenge for all of us is, how do we make it attractive enough? Could we present a shorter time period when the real need is there, and have it still be considered attractive? Because I think the original application, Matt, was for 10 years. Is that, if I remember the documentation, or 10 years, and then came back with 8. So it's very different than what they asked for, but it doesn't mean it can't be significantly impactful. So I, as well, I'm uncomfortable with the 8-year term. It would be interested in, can we present something that the EDC is comfortable with and is deemed to be very attractive and supportive, but at a shorter term. So that's my opinion on it, since everyone else has weighed in. Is there any further discussion or comments from the board? Okay. So in terms of action, Mr. Tierney, Matt, we don't need to take action tonight. Would Matt, I guess I'm going to ramble on for a second. Matt, would you and Michelle, would you consider the comments that were made, and give us an opportunity, or give you an opportunity to consider the comments that were made and present an alternative or not, for a final consideration? That way you've had a chance to sort of digest the comments and see if there's any validity to them. You're comfortable with it. You can present something differently or not. It's up to you. But my suggestion would be that this comes back, giving you an opportunity to consider the comments, since there were substantive comments across the board, and just decide if there's a different way to do it, still showing significant support and still feeling like we're supporting the EDC and their recommendations to support this project economically.
Yeah, so if I could respond to that.
Yeah, please.
I appreciate everyone's comments and actually, it was kind of like, which conversation do we have first? Because it very nicely leads into the next conversation that Michelle and I want to have on economic development, generally speaking. Of course, it's a challenge because we're trying to incentivize development. This relief that we're providing is for tax revenue that doesn't exist now, right? So, in one way or another, we're going to receive benefits. Those benefits may be socially, they may be in the way they stimulate or encourage other development. They may be personal property tax, which, by the way, I need to do a little research to see if we could potentially consider other forms of relief. All I know right now is that this incentive program dictated by state statute is specific to real property. But I will say that in anticipation of your thoughts, and some of I call it precedent, even though I think I want to be careful with that term because the way we've utilized this program in the past, and I hope that we can continue to do so, is going to be rather subjective. Anybody can ask, but we're trying to find projects that that we want to see, right? This is an incentive to get what we want, that fits the the vision, is complements what else we have going on, or as mentioned, the word stimulation stimulates the growth that we want to see. But in anticipation of that, Michelle and I have had that conversation, and in the spirit of kind of expediting and showing the community that we are more business friendly than the perception is. We would be, I think the EDC would be amenable to the idea of front loading 5-year term with maybe 2 years of relief. It scaled down to 75, 50, 25. If that made 6 years, it's full taxes. So that would be something that I think the EDC would be comfortable with. If the board's comfortable with it, let's just hope that it is the incentive to the developer and the investor that will provide the needed incentive to get the job done.
So I have a follow-up question on that. So by virtue of this particular project going forward, associated infrastructure being created, is that going to in effect bring other, like a Pied Piper kind of scenario where others will come? Because I noticed there's a bunch of lots on 85 that are for sale. Some of them have been sold already.
Yeah.
I'm assuming for some kind of commercial purpose. So would that be sort of like coming together?
I like to think that.
Right.
I would, in my mind, I separate those spaces that you're referring to. We call that the Ellenberg subdivision, recently improved subdivision opposite Wild Bill's
Right.
area.
Mhm.
So that is a subdivision, recently approved. There is development interest, and we have, I think, some prospective, parties that I think will probably be pretty compatible with, the town's vision for that area.
Mhm.
Now, that's in the neighborhood convenience zone, another zoning district designation, with a little bit of a different purpose.
Mhm.
The Amston Village District, a little bit further southerly, is kind of like, it's distinct. And so when I think about, does it have the potential to stimulate activity, I think of Tertian Mill South. Now, all the way down to probably past Giuliano, the bar there, the self-storage unit. So basically that district, but there is development potential down there. There's development pads right on the same area where the post office is and where Giuliano is.
Mhm.
And those all have really good proximity to the airline trail. So in terms of stimulation, I think about what can happen along the airline trail as a driver. I also think about being on a state route where there's some collaboration with the state. In terms of infrastructure, I don't see that this stimulating investment in infrastructure unless it's specific to moving water up to the Hebron
Right.
Center, where we really want to concentrate the growth. So I think we have some opportunities,
Mhm.
probably not game changing, but certainly that would be compatible with the vision and the intent of those zoning districts.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I guess the answer is, I think the EDC would be comfortable with the concept that Keith presented. And it would be in keeping with the idea of that early stage relief, which is really kind of the goal.
To follow up on Peter's question, if I may, Mr. Chairman.
Please.
So this is, we normally, with the board of selectmen, this is the first glance. This has been presented in public. Statute's what, 60 days, you have to have a response for once you've been.
I think that's per our ordinance. I'm not sure if it's dictated by statute, but in our ordinance. It's
Okay, so in our ordinance,
there's a
it's-
timeline.
So it would suffice if this was continued on to the next agenda, and you could go back and maybe tweak, now that you've heard the,
The motion,
yeah,
recommendation.
recommendation.
So we could even put through another motion with the 5 years.
So we have a meeting on June 17th.
20th, I think, right?
You were.
So we,
Oh,
Yeah,
EDC.
theirs will be before ours.
I got you. Yeah, so that'll work.
The EDC
Yep.
can put forward a new motion with the 5 years at that rate reduction and push that back through to the board of selectmen for the 20.
Yeah, and any investigation into other possibilities, we can get creative in other ways. But to Dan's point, there was some flack given, and I'm just trying to be mindful of that and mindful of how far down the road, we put these things out. So, I'm not opposed. Again, I think all of us recognize the importance of that lot specifically and the development that it will bring. I just don't want to get too aggressive with real estate abatement.
Okay, so it sounds like we're in some consensus here, at least in terms of bringing it back. So Mr. Cheney will have it as old business and for the next agenda, and they'll come back with a motion for us to consider and discuss.
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. And yeah, I mean, please hear loud and clear. We support this. This isn't, it's just about how we can support it in a way that's consistent with sort of our long-term objectives, reflective of the town and yours as well, in terms of the EDC specifically and another business planning. So thank you very much. So Mr. Tierney, that moves us to continuation. I think this is a Matt theme, isn't it?
It's the Matt meeting. Yeah.
The Matt Michelle, yeah.
Item
Matt Michelle.
9B,
Michelle, bail him out if you need to. Yeah.
Come
I'm
on.
number 3.
Economic Development Incentive Program.
Yes, sir.
I like
Okay.
how they changed the cake with the flower girl. That was pretty creative.
Okay.
But there's no end to the appetite for that. So,
That's not what I'm here representing.
so, all right, so thank you, Mr. Chair. So the last conversation, again, I said before, I was kind of tossing and turning about what would be more appropriate to start with. But it really, the conversation we just had is exactly what I was hoping to get to, and a conversation that I want to continue. So ultimately what I'm getting at here, and I'll express a little bit more detail, but is that I think that the board, perhaps some of our other active boards and commissions need to start to communicate and brainstorm and get a little bit more proactive on what we're going to do next. Now, we just adopted our plan of conservation development. So what's next, right? How do we begin to implement? How do we prioritize projects? So I'm going to go through my list here, but really ultimately what I'm getting at here is the EDC specifically is looking for some direction and perhaps some support for more robust and more intensive conversations on what's next. So as it relates to the Economic Development Center program, it's one of very, very few tools, but it doesn't mean that is all that is out there. We can help move forward some of our plans in a lot of different ways. Results of the plan of conservation development, the marketing plan that the EDC just completed, our Hebron Center plan that's been in existence for upwards of 15 years. All those and various other plans, they all point to a very deliberate village style development build out of our Hebron Center and the other districts, smaller districts, which is often best realized by small local upstart businesses that usually come in or often come in with very limited resources that can benefit the most with financial assistance, particularly in the first few years. So kind of just covered that. Considering our limited competitiveness in the regional market, due to our location, some of our resource limitations, I think Hebron, it has to work on improving the perception that we are unified from board to board to board. Not just EDC makes a recommendation and it comes to the board of selectmen and they say, that's not what we thought. That's not where we're going. We're not on the same page. So the emphasis needs to be on being on the same page so that when an action by a commission who takes very seriously their role, and communicates in a way that they think is on behalf of the entire community, as kind of directed or dictated by plan of conservation development, other plans, then the logic would be that it's on the same wavelength as the next board that is in the line of the bureaucracy that we have to get through to get projects done. So selectively incentivizing businesses doesn't have to set a precedent. We talked about that. But I think we need to be clearer, maybe perhaps, about what incentives we have to offer. EDC wants to take an active role in kind of fleshing those out, making those clear to prospective businesses that might be looking at our community, but might be looking elsewhere as well. How do we put ourselves, what's our competitive edge? How do we share with the community or with the business community, the investment community, that we are a place that is good to do business, and here's some of the things we can offer. Maybe someday we don't need to make incentives, or provide incentives. We're in good shape, but I think to get where we want to be, or we might not necessarily be currently, unfortunately, that's kind of the reality of at least my perception of our place. So EDC is just thinking we need to maybe take a little bit more proactive approach to that. Right now, I think we're having a little bit of a reactive approach. So yes, I do frequently field calls for development proposals. A lot of those are just fielding questions. It's not really a realistic proposal. But from time to time, you do hear something that's like, well, that's what we're talking about. How can we make that happen? How can we bring that to fruition? So that's a reactive approach. So what I think EDC is getting at is perhaps, we need to be thinking a little more proactively. Did I get that right? I said that was a reactive. This is a proactive. Okay. Another thing that, EDC has been talking about a little bit lately. So whether or not we decide that collectively we want to be as proactive as we could be, the other thing that we've noticed is that the program needs to be updated. It's not a particularly professional, and a program that looks like it's got its stuff together. You could probably tell by that application form, right? So we need to spend some time, but that has to be done with the approval of the Board of Selectmen. We can't just, my understanding is we can't just, take the upon ourselves and just, rephrase the program and take it whatever direction we want to, because ultimately we're going to hit the Board of Selectmen, and if we're not on the same page, then we're going nowhere. So I would argue that perhaps that has to apply to other functions of Hebron's operation, but specifically as it relates to economic development. And that a lot, of course, I take responsibility. A lot of that goes through my office. So just giving you a heads up that that's I think an investment at the time, energy that probably needs to happen. But the community also probably needs to revisit what other programs, projects, and assets it has, and start thinking about how to position those for success. So we have a Horton master plan, right? We've made an investment in the plunge into the Horton property. We have a lot of really great real estate on either side of Horton, privately held real estate, but we also have some substantial publicly held real estate. We need to start thinking about how we can move along in those things, or at least have a good direction forward. The unfortunate reality of the Horton Master Plan is that it is dated, and several of our plans are dated. The realities of the modern market, the post-COVID market, are not substantial retail scale the way it is outlined in the Horton Master Plan. It's not going to be office scale. It's not going to be light industrial. Let's just face it. So when we think about that, we think about the other programs. STEEP program, Small Town Economic Assistance Program, right? We've been incredibly successful with that. It's made a huge difference in our community. Recently notified that they've upped the ante. You can now make an application for up to $1 million. Well, what can we do with that? What ought to be our next projects in line? I've been lucky that we've had a stage pretty well set for me to make some strong applications. But that's not going to last forever. We got to prioritize. Infrastructure, investments in infrastructure, we just want to emphasize that these are incredibly related to the success of our economic development success of center of town, particularly bike and pedestrian improvements. And then I think, the conversation about what the role of housing is in Hebron Center. So you mentioned that you've gotten some flack for some of the decisions that have been made by the Board of Selectmen in the past. I would argue that in some cases, that could be due to a lack of understanding. I think that particularly as it relates to housing, that is going to be a hurdle that we're going to have to overcome. Now, EDC is looking or is looking like a renewed commission with a lot of new energy. They have new members. They have new interest in participation. Housing Choices Advisory Committee is an incredibly strong commission looking to work. And then, of course, the Planning and Zoning Commission just completed their 10-year plan. Now we need to be talking about implementation. There's a lot of changes that are available to us, prioritizing and just making sure the community is on the same page with what's in the plan, which is not universally true. So there's room for discussion on those items. So ultimately, what I guess I'm getting at, half of the EDC is saying, what could we do? What would the board like to do to move along, move to the next step? If that's a workshop, maybe a joint workshop, maybe we throw it out to a couple other people. Maybe it's a board chair workshop, whatever it might be. I want to encourage the board to, start thinking about what we can do next, despite the fact that there's already a million things on everyone's plate. So,
Dan,
sure, yeah.
I really think, and again, going back, sadly, this is a reality. It's something I actually brought up again multiple times. With the planning and zoning, with their plan of development, we were probably one of the last entities to see all of the work that had been put into that. I know they had contacted other entities, but there was never any updates as to where they were going, what they were thinking along the way. We really need to have some workshops. We need to sit down with the different boards, and in this circle, it would probably planning and zoning, the economic development, Board of Selectmen, and in some aspects, the affordable housing group, just so that everybody has a idea of what the other entities are thinking, just so we could kind of share ideas and also share concerns. Too often it comes before us at a meeting like this. We have a lot on our plates. Everybody has a lot on their individual plates, but it's kind of time for us to, spend some time, sit down, get an idea where the other entities are coming from and some of what their concerns are, and even maybe some of what their parameters and constraints are. Otherwise we're all working in different vacuums and potentially going different directions.
I think,
Okay.
overall, I think, Matt, your idea of a workshop and anything, I mentioned it as well. I think that's great. Now, how we fit it on the schedule and land, but it's important. Economic development is important, communication, collaboration. And I think a workshop would be a good idea unless anyone else on the board disagrees. I don't see anything there. So,
No,
so Matt, oh, go ahead. Someone said something. I'm sorry.
I was just saying no disagreement. I agree.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Okay. Yeah, let's do that. That's a great next step, Matt, in terms of in airing out, hey, maybe, how do we communicate and collaborate better and more effectively? Well, let's talk through it as well as, what the vision is and get a little stronger with our collaboration. So that's great. And I know everyone's busy, but this is important. Economic development clearly is a significant part of the, well, it's prioritized and a significant part of our thought process going forward. No question is a priority for the town. So, and our residents. And so let's figure that out and let's put that on and figure out what we can do to schedule that. So I'll ask you to just defer to Andy and the town and manager's office, and we'll get that on the schedule.
Okay, thank you.
I just had a quick question as far as you two as leaders of the EDC. What do you see? Like, what is the vision? Are there any examples of cities or small towns in America that you would say are great examples of what could happen here in Hebron?
Yeah, we both have some.
Yeah,
First.
I think, yeah, we can, let's work on that.
Mhm.
Certainly there are aspects of many different places that I think are consistent. I love to believe that Hebron is unique, and that we have special opportunities. But I think there's a lot of different elements of response to that question, architecturally, socially, how we take seriously our stewardship of the environment, I think is huge too. And I know it's a priority for a lot of community members. So we can work on that. Maybe what I can do is I can reach out to, between the three of us, I'm meeting Peter as the board chair, look for a little bit of framework for how we might work our way through a workshop, and have a little bit of some strong talking points to move forward with.
Yeah. I'm sure you all are considering this, but the concept of the third place is kind of a fuzzy term right now. I think our citizenry, especially our young people, have really lost a sense of physical space where there's a sense of community, belonging, connecting. And this was exacerbated by COVID. And I hope that's something that is, a priority when we're looking at our vision and stuff, a place in which people can find the connection again. In our increasingly secular society, it's like where to gather and break bread and, have community and that sort of thing. I think that's, that's more like a societal bigger picture kind of thing.
Yeah, well, I mean, the reality is that requires space.
Right.
And we have space.
We do.
And we have space that we can control.
Mhm.
And so, it might take some incentives. It might take, some investment here, but,
Right.
and again, selling, which I'm going to hand over to her, Michelle, selling or communicating our, our vision and our support for what exists, can help build, I think, support for what is to come.
Mhm.
Maybe, well, I'll let you read the next agenda item, but it would be a good
Oh,
segment.
thanks, Matt.
Okay, great. So you're talking about moving to 9C, the EDC Marketing Plan Communications Program.
And just because I know Craig's here, and he goes a bit early.
Back.
Okay, so it looks like we're moving Mr. Tierney to 9C.
9C, still the Matt show, economic
No, it's
development,
not- it's
I'm
my show
sorry,
now.
I'm sorry.
It's my show now.
Michelle's show,
Yeah.
Economic Development Commission Meeting Plan Communication Program.
Yes.
Great, thank you. Go ahead, Michelle.
Thank you. So Matt talked to you guys a lot about bringing businesses into town. And what I actually want to talk to you about is the businesses that we already have here. So the EDC is supposed to be promoting business development and also promoting our current business set that we have. And we do have a lot of great businesses in town. We have this new alignment with the Connecticut River Valley Chamber. Thank you again for that. So I really am as the liaison back and forth between the chamber. I serve on the chamber board, and then as the chair of the EDC. So I'm sort of the link between the two, and I'm excited to try to get this partnership going and start getting some of the benefits that we have from it. And I think what we need to focus on is the current business set that we have, and how do we begin communicating with them and then communicating out their needs to our community that is already present. So with the Connecticut Valley Chamber, we and Matt's already requested to start working on this process. But our very first step is that we need to actually establish a business directory, because the business directory that we have for the town is currently fairly outdated. And we don't, it's really just like an Excel spreadsheet. So we're hoping to rebuild, and this is the project that the EDC is going to take on. We're rebuilding our business directory, which is going to allow us to be able to communicate with our current business community and incoming businesses as a whole, really for the first time in quite a long time as an economic development commission anyways. I'm sure the town has ways to communicate with their businesses, but from an EDC perspective, we're looking to get this information out to them, whether it be things that are happening in the town, things that are important that are happening, as far as rules, regulations, things that are going on in town. And then our connection with the Connecticut River Valley Chamber also gives us access to a ton of extremely important information for small businesses that they might not have access to otherwise. So our alignment with them is allowing a link that we didn't have before, specifically when it comes to advocacy and things that are really important to small businesses, but they don't really have time to see what they are, because we're running in a million different directions and we don't really have this opportunity. So something coming from within their town telling them like, hey, you need to pay attention to this bill that's coming across the Senate this week, things like that are options for us to be able to just offer more services to the small businesses we have in the town. In order to do this, the EDC would like the blessing, I guess, of the Board of Selectmen to be able to, first of all, we're going to build this business directory. And then we would like to house this business directory within a content management system so that we have an ongoing way to continue to update the businesses that we have in town. It would allow us to welcome new businesses, change, when we have a change of hands, like with the property with Pete's Pub and into the ranch house, when those new people come in, we want to be able to switch that information over so that we can contact the new owners and the people that are coming into the community, into the business community specifically. So we already have budget for it, but we would like to utilize a contact management system to be able to start building that, and then to be able to start communicating it out with like newsletters. Maybe it's only quarterly to start with, but something where we're providing information to the businesses in town about what is happening in town. It could include things like events that are happening in town. Maybe not every business knows that there's an event going on, or their road's going to be closed for some reason, or whatever it might be. And then the other piece of that is that we also feel that we need a public way to be able to communicate information about the businesses in our town. And we don't really have a way to do that right now. The lowest hanging fruit on that is, of course, social media. So it is very common in other towns. I've looked at many of them. The economic development commissions have their own social media pages that are representing their EDCs. We think that starting with Facebook and Instagram is probably the easiest option. It's the one where the majority of our constituents are located. And being able to create accounts that are run by the EDC, and maybe they're not going to be active all the time, but it would be great to be able to have an account like that where we can share out things that are happening in our businesses in a position of some authority from the town. So in other words, it's not just being shared on a community page, it's being shared on the town page, it's being shared on the EDC page. So we have everything we need to do this. Like we have the graphics, we have everything we need. Fortunately, we got all of these things from the marketing plan that we had worked on with FH, what was their, what were they called? Something, FHI. So we have all of these things, and as we were wrapping up that marketing plan with them, that was actually the last piece that we asked for was social media ready to go, things that were ready to go for social media so that we could highlight different businesses, different things that were happening in businesses, different events that were happening that would benefit our businesses. We would love to see a relationship starting to get cultivated with our business community, which we don't really have right now. We don't have a chamber of commerce. We don't have, there's a couple BNI groups, but other than that, we don't have any of that. So, you know, the EDC is hoping that we can, of course, we're not going to just do it. Like, we want to make sure that the Board of Selectmen's on board with having us have a presence where we can communicate both internally with our businesses and then externally to their benefit. And I think that this is important for us to be able to get the full utilization that we have out of the membership that we have in Connecticut Rally Chamber, to be able to really, we can't do anything if we can't communicate. So right now we don't have an option. We don't have a way to communicate. If we were going to do this, we don't really need anything from the town other than your blessing. And then of course the town pages, it would be excellent if we could help share what we have. I think that's all.
I just had a question about the software that you're gonna use.
Yes.
You're gonna get that for the chamber?
No, I'm going to use Constant Contact. It's the easiest one to utilize and the one that's the most easily able to pass on. So if I was no longer the chair and somebody else wanted to take it, it's just a matter of passing on a password. It's not a system that's housed in any kind of software. And it's
Cloud-based.
Yeah,
It's a good-
cloud-based. It's a great system. It allows building newsletters very, very easily. And since I'm the one that's probably going to be starting this, it's the one I'm most comfortable with.
Yes. Sounds good.
Okay, so, oh,
Should I ask a question out of order?
At the end, there will be an opportunity for,
Excuse me.
public comment. No, that's quite all right.
so what I'm thinking is sorry. What I'm thinking.
No, go ahead, Pete, I'm sorry.
No worries. I interrupted. The idea, I mean, I think I can speak for the board in that we want to communication is in improving communication to our residents, to our businesses, to our community in general is a great idea. I would suggest, at least I'll tell you what I'm thinking, and Andy, tell me if I'm off on this, is what my initial thought would be to present the approach that you're going to take and present it to the town manager's office, because I like to think of everything that we do, we need to make sure we understand who manages the accounts, the updates, and the approval of content, and sort of as this goes forward. As you said, if you're not a chair, you're not chair anymore, it's a few years down the road, whatever it is, communicating to the town residents through a town, mechanism. My thinking is that the town manager's office would, be involved in that chain of communication. So I would suggest that you bring that forward to Andy, and then Andy, you can bring it back to us. Speaking for the board, obviously someone could disagree, but I would think we're all in support of improving our communications associated with our business community members. Andy, if I could just get your thoughts on that thought, and then maybe open the rest of the board has comments.
I'd work with Michelle and Matt and they could put some sort of draft structure together, what you're proposing, and you plan on doing it and submit that. We can.
We actually have most of it already done because it was at the tail end of the marketing plan. So the structure of what we're looking to do is in there. The only thing I would say is that we probably need to come up with a structure itself and agree on it. Because of the nature of social media itself, we obviously don't have the time to be able to go back and forth with meetings, to be able to do like every piece of content, for example, just because it loses its timeliness at that point. But I think if we could come up with a general, like, this is what we're going to do each month, and this is how we're going to do it, and this is approximately what it's going to look like. We already have all of the branding guidelines that we did with the marketing plan. So we have a structure to brand the EDC content, I think, in a way that could potentially become very powerful tool for the town over the next couple of years. So that would just be the only thing I would warn back and forth as far as approving things, is that I think we need to keep in mind that there would probably need to be a general approval of, like, yes, you are allowed to post content, Michelle or Matt or whoever, because oftentimes you're talking about content that's coming up that's prevalent. It's within the next couple days, you know? So we would just need to keep that in mind.
Okay, so does the rest of does anyone, yeah, go ahead. From the rest of the board, is there any comment?
Yeah, I just,
course.
if I could on this.
Yeah.
Again, I'm totally on board with the marketing thing because, you know, we've brought up between, you know, 9A, B, and C, some really great points. We not only need to be marketing our town, showing how successful businesses here, you know, are surviving to encourage businesses to come in, but we also need to be marketing kind of like what we were talking about taking flack from residents just because they're not always necessarily educated on the ins and outs of what may happen in these individual transactions. So, you know, we need to see marketing from all those different perspectives. Not only are we marketing to businesses coming in, marketing to businesses that are already here, marketing to the public and the residents. And I agree that right now, just in the world we're in, social media seems to be the easiest way to do that because, you know, we're not getting a ton of traction with our just normal websites. And let's face it, we're in a town that has a newspaper that comes out once a week, and we're lucky to get half of 2 pages. So, you know, there's definitely a void that needs to be filled with some sort of outreach. And yes, anything with social media has to be immediate and attentive because, you know, the attention span of the average user is dwindling. With that being said, we also have to be, and I hate to always be the naysayer, but that seems to be my role. As a government entity, we can't just be letting social media run wild. We have obligations to uphold certain standards of government organizations, and those must be maintained. So any moderators or content approvers that we set up for these accounts need to be aware of those, and they need to be extremely mindful of them. And we need to be attentive to if there's, for whatever reason, a lapse or something else. So I just wanted to kind of throw that out there because, you know, I personally am not a huge social media person because it quickly becomes a cesspool. As a government organization, we must hold ourselves out of that.
And I think that the purpose of the EDC would be to run a page and not a group, which is what is going to protect us from that a little bit. When we're running a page, we have a lot more control. We have actually complete control. So we can decide, and Matt and I have already discussed a little bit as far as like the commenting section. So do we allow comments? Do we not allow any comments? Comments are what help make events do better, but they also can be, you know, so I think we would have to sort of tread lightly and see how things go. But the fact that we would be doing a page and not a group, which is actually what exists the most in this town right now, is groups, right? And the groups are very difficult to control. You have to have administrators and moderators, and even then, it's very difficult to track down where things end up. With a page, it's much like a business, and it would be moderated as such. We can set different guidelines based on what we see, and it will take time to build traction too. So we'll probably need to allow comments, for example, first, because we're going to want to allow people to tag other people so that they start following the page. Once we get to the point where the page is being used in the purpose that we want to use it, if we start to see comments on the regular that are negative, we might want to turn off commenting, or we might limit commenting. But because it's a page and not a group, we also have the ability to just delete them. We can take out complete comments. We can ban people from commenting. Like, there's a lot of availability for us running it as a business page that is not allowed in a community group page. So being able to do it this way is obviously a lot better. And I do think that it would be our hope eventually that we would maybe be able to find some hours somewhere for somebody to maybe manage it, you know.
Sounds a little bit like a regulator, doesn't it?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to weigh in if I can.
Yeah, go ahead, Tiffany, go ahead. Yeah, please.
So if you'll permit me just a couple of minutes, and I apologize, I'm fading a little fast here. I'm a little concerned by what I just heard in terms of solid social media policy. I do this for a living, and I can tell you, I run several business pages, including one for a state agency. Deleting comments is usually never the right approach, right? Depending on the nature of the comment. So all this to say that I'm excited that we're moving towards utilizing the power of social media to reach people in town. I want to make sure that the policy we develop, to Keith's points, are going to follow best practices. And so I would caution you and Matt, Michelle, when you're looking at that, to ensure that you're following best practices and that you're aligning with town policies. I also think it would be beneficial if you decide to hand the page off to somebody else, that there is an amount of training involved. As a comms director, I'm regularly taking trainings to learn more about social media. It changes every day. It's just, there are platforms that change every day. So I'm excited, but I just want to caution you that I am hearing some things that in my extensive background are not in alignment with best practices. And I'm happy to be available to discuss that and to talk that out with you. But let's just make sure as we move forward that we follow best practices. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments from the board? I mean, obviously we've covered quite a bit, and I think we're in a good next step in this area, unless, so anyone else, Dan or Claudia, have anything else you wish to add to this conversation at this point before we move on?
Dan Larson. I just want to verify that the information given out is accurate. I do not follow a lot of the social media posts because so many of the comments made by people are made by people who obviously don't know all the facts or who make a lot of assumptions. So it's just very, very important that it is a factual based site. And that's all I have to say.
Great. I think that's what Claudia or Tiffany's talking about. Claudia, you can go next. Is that best practices, right? Is part of that, making sure that all those checks and balances are there and the approach is appropriate. So I think Tiffany makes a good point, and Dan, you as well. Claudia, anything else you wish to add before we move on?
I'm all set. Thank you.
Okay. Well, if you're good for now, Michelle, Matt, I really appreciate all the time you've taken to join us tonight. And we've covered quite a bit, and it feels like we're making a lot of really good progress here. So thank you for that and all your efforts to make this even more impactful as a commission and a commission within even more significant coordination within the town entities, as well as improving and focusing on communication to our residents. So thank you very much. Okay, if then Mr. Tierney, I think we're back for those that are following the agenda to 8A. So I know before we start here that you've been given a task to really focus on moving this forward and updating us, and it looks like you've done a real terrific job. I appreciate the appropriate amount of pressure that you put on the different project leaders to come forward with more substantive information. And I know you have a substantive update, but in advance, I want to thank you and your staff, Don, obviously, for all the hard work that you're putting in to make sure that we continue to stay on task with this, on target, and every single dollar, as Keith, I think, has mentioned. I think I counted 17 times, Keith, and I stopped counting, that we're going to spend every dollar appropriately within the guidelines. We're not giving any of it back to the federal government. Keith, did I remember that correctly? Did you say that once?
I think I said every penny, but I just wasn't sure.
So,
Yes.
So the management of this is critical, right? And so, Annie, I know you've worked really hard on this, you and Don, and to continue to make this an important part of our agenda. So please go right ahead with your update.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So it's item 8A, American Rescue Plan State and Local Recovery Funds update. Attaches the updated ARPA status report. The current balance in the ARPA reserve is $263,280. This amount includes the full amount of the $145,000 refunded from the Wall Street sidewalk allocation, which was paid through a steep grant in the CIP budget. And then we'll proceed with the updates and information regarding outstanding projects will be provided at this meeting. We also have some important key staff here to update the Board of Selectmen on some projects, but as I stated in the town manager report, I think you're gonna be presently pleased as we go through this list. We have quite an update and good news is what I think. And I'm gonna defer it to Donna Lanza, who's the guru with this chart and the numbers and the monies, and we have all the backup information from the entities on these projects. So without further ado,
You want Matt and Craig to go first, or do you want me to just start?
I think it'd be appropriate to quickly just go down each project, give you a status report.
Okay.
It shouldn't take a lot of time. And then if there's any questions, any of the projects, we could stop and address them, but then we'll let Matt and Craig specifically speak to the larger ones that they're dealing with.
Okay, so we will start with the first two security measures for town buildings and the vandal-proof surveillance cameras for veterans. We have met with the company that is going to do this work for us. It's Valley Communications. They toured all of the locations. They have interviewed people that they needed to interview, and we should be receiving their proposal early next week. They did indicate they thought that we'll be pleased with their proposals and that hopefully we'll have enough money. So we will see how those come in. Virtual meeting room, conference equipment, that has been ordered. They are waiting for the materials to come in. They've started programming things. So hopefully we will have a delivery date and installation date for you soon. The cyber threat assessments and security measures, we are still moving ahead and working with Novus on that project. And the implicit bias training, we do want to schedule a few more sessions and open those up to boards and commission members for that. And we have a lot of new staff that we will include with that. So we will probably be doing that after summer, so sometime in early fall. Was there a question?
Yeah, I'm sorry, Donna. So the implicit bias training is being put on by a third party.
Right.
Okay. And so they are currently under contract for a certain number of sessions, or I just want to make sure, because, you know, the November timeframe, like, it has to be under contract. We
Right.
can do trainings
Right.
next year,
Yeah.
but it has to be under contract by December 31st.
So we
Okay.
don't have a formal contract with him. We can, I believe, schedule
Yeah,
X number of sessions, and however,
we know how much the
Are that
sessions
many?
are and.
we know how much
schedule
the
it.
sessions are.
Okay. Yeah, I just want to make sure. I
Yeah,
mean,
you're right.
because
Yeah.
if anything fell through and those funds are not contracted, and now we're in November and we have to get those funds reallocated
Yeah.
somewhere else,
Yeah.
that's very late in
Yep.
the game.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
We're hoping to have those classes in October, November.
In the fall.
Okay, but yes. Good.
Skate park, pickleball, dog, field lighting, and Burnt Hill Park upgrades are all Craig. So Craig, if you would like to come on up to the X marks the spot.
Sure. All right, so thanks for having me again. I know, the last meeting I wasn't really able to attend, but you guys had some questions about some stuff, so I'll hit on those as well. Pickleball courts, the courts were approved, for the location by planning and zoning, so we're going ahead and we're working on the bid process right now. There's a couple, changes we have to make for the overall plan, but the courts themselves are good to go. So we're moving forward with that pretty quickly. Field lighting, we have a lighting engineer that's working on putting together a site plan, and we'll be working with him through the town engineer to on the bid process for that. So that's moving along pretty well. That's right. I mean, that's
And the
pretty much where we're at.
amendment's been approved,
Amendment's been approved, so the
and the zoning amended the regulation.
so once we have the site plan, we'll be able to go in front of planning and zoning and get that plan approved as well. the field improvements that you guys approved last time. That was on the list that hadn't been approved, got approved the last time I was here talking with you guys. That should go out to bid hopefully the next couple weeks. Kind of waiting to get past Hebron Day, so I have some more open time to actually sit and work on that. So those three right now are moving along pretty nicely. We should be out to bid again within the next month or two with all of them. So I would say that contracts will be in hand before those deadlines easily, unless Matt thinks differently, but I think we're on the right track with all that. So the dog park, I know we still were talking the last meeting. Again, I wasn't able to attend, but I kind of updated the price on that with the quote for the fence that I received. I've had 2 people come out to look at removing the trees for the area that we're looking at. I was supposed to have both quotes today, and unfortunately I don't have either of them in hand, so it's still an estimate. I'm still thinking it's around $93,000 for that dog park at Burnt Hill. I think, Claudia, you had some questions about the specs of the park and if we were following certain parameters. Yeah, so I've been pretty much, I'm doing the minimum requirements for a dog park. So, and that all that information was taken from like the American Kennel Club, the Trust of Public Land, National Parks and Rec Commission, Connecticut Parks and Rec. So following them, it's an acre of land. Double gates that you alluded to will have double gates. 5-foot fence, an area for large dogs, which is over 35 pounds, an area for smaller dogs was under 35 pounds. We'd also be having access gates. Entrance would be either stone dust or mulch, and then grass. We'd be picking actual trees, whoever came and actually did the work. We'd want to keep a certain amount of trees on the property. The only thing that we don't have access to is water, which is an important factor to a lot of dog parks. It's not required, but it is important. In that location too, there's, it's the best location we can figure out. But right now, the parking isn't ideal. I don't know if any of you guys have been to Burnt Hill during one of our events or on a Sunday during football or when Ram Lacrosse was there the other day, but the dog park would have to close during certain events. And we don't plow up there during the winter either. So, there's still some issues with that plus the pricing that I'm estimating right now. So I wish I had a finite number to tell you, especially with the tree removal. I just don't have it. And I didn't want to go to the town engineer yet and start drawing up a plan for it until I actually knew what those costs were. So, once I can have those costs and if extra funding is available, I would go to the town engineer and start working on a site plan. I'll kind of, I can keep working on it, but I know we're on a time crunch here and we're really trying to get numbers and see what's viable. So if it's something that's you don't believe can move forward, I mean, it's always something we can look at for future CIP, or maybe it's a steep application or something like that where we have more planning and can figure more out. That's kind of how we are with that right now. Skate park. The last one I asked, I kind of gave you guys the sheet last time between the modular and the concrete. So the modular, we received the quote for the concrete pad for just over 54,000, and the modular park for just around 164,000. So total, it comes out to about 220. With a concrete park, I was asking, I think, that was 220. I think for the concrete, I was looking at like 331. And I know there's a lot of questions between the difference between modular and a concrete park. And I've spoke to a couple people. So a gentleman from American Ram Company, who's the one who put together the modular design and quote for me. Their company does both modular and concrete parks. Kind of some of the information he had was that modular parks in the past haven't been as successful, and technology has changed, but there still is a negative perception on modular equipment. The equipment's made out of galvanized steel. The actual riding surface is a powder coated paint that needs to be, repainted as needed, or usually about 5 years. And it's a paint that we can get from Sherwin-Williams. They offer a 20-year warranty on their products. And if anything breaks, replacement parts are fabricated in-house and shipped out in a few weeks. And it is cost effective. Some negative parts about the modulars, and this is taken from just a little research I've done, as well as I have a letter from Mike Hurst, who is the advisor to the Ram Skate Club and is also on the skate park committee. But the modular parks have the negative perception. So there's some people that won't even come and ride them just because they're modulars. They have no interest, no matter how good they are. And, for American Ram Company, they are, pretty elite, but there's a lot of people just won't come. So it's perception of they're not permanent. That's a perception where, the skate community is kind of under the impression that, hey, someone could decide that they don't want a skate park at any minute and they're going to take these right up. There's also, perception that they're, I think we've talked about it before, that they're not as unique as a concrete park. The metal being steel, it is louder. And I know the Ram has a concern, because they are outside doing things. They do come to the park. Or this particular teacher says he brings kids out to the park to read outside or do work outside. So that's an issue. They do get relatively hot during the summer. And if it's wet, they become extremely slippery. And one of the big things is when you do put those on the concrete pad, we have to make sure that the concrete pad is perfect. You don't want any lip between the riding surface and the actual pad, or it becomes unusable and extremely unsafe. The concrete park obviously is a lot more expensive. With maintenance for that, it's concrete, cracks are inevitable, which we can seal. But one of the things with that is, in 25 years, what's the condition going to be? As if we're doing Band-Aids here and there. I think if we maintain it properly, in 25 years, hopefully we're looking at it and saying, wow, look at this park. It's still usable, it's still rideable, and people are still coming to it. So those are kind of the negatives with that. I think the price obviously is the biggest concern when it comes to the concrete park. The thing with that is the skate community views it as being permanent. There's not that idea that it can be removed at any point. It's there to stay. It has unique characters, it has a better flow. And to kind of go against the modulars, it deflects sunlight better. It's quieter, and it's actually easier on your body if you fall. On powder coated paint, you might fall down, hit your knee, and you're scraping your knee all the way down, where concrete's a little less, or a little more forgiving. So, and these are things that I'm taking directly from the skate club at Ram. These are some of their concerns. And one of the things they've said is that, most of the modular parks in Connecticut, I know American Ram Company just built one in Meriden, which is beautiful. But they said that most of them don't exist anymore. They said there's only 3 that he knows of that he's skated in. Concrete parks are Willimantic just built another one. Manchester's building one. East Hampton, Moodus. I mean, there's tons of towns around here that have them. Couple of other questions I think I have written down from you guys. So insurance rates was a question. I couldn't really find any different rates between concrete versus modular, but Kerma does have casualty liability coverage for skate parks. So we would cover with that, and we just would have to come up with a risk management plan, which is something that we would have in place anyway. Long range financial, modulars, again, you're looking at repainting, you know, the riding surface every 5 years, concrete, you know, sealing as needed. Repairs, same thing, repainting, crack sealing. How hard to repair? Again, modulars are built in-house, ship out in a few weeks. Concrete, if it's a small repair, for the most part, our parks guys can do basic concrete work. And then the warranty, the modular pieces are 20 years. I don't have warranty information on a concrete park. So there's a kind of what to look at when we're talking about the two parks. You know, personally, obviously the modular, the price is a little easier to swallow. And the guy from American Ram Company, like I said, does both. And he's high on them, but it just seems like we're just getting more and more people that, you know, they want concrete and they're trying to push that on. And when I sent the modular design to skate park, you know, the first quote I got, or first email I got received back was pretty much like, oh, that's a kick in the pants, you know? So we went from a concrete design to the modular. I think they both look great personally, but I also don't skateboard. So I'm inclined to listen to the Ram Skate Club, who I think this is going to benefit the most, and the teacher who's the advisor and is an active skater, and is very invested in this. We've also had someone reach out who owns a local business in town, and her family, and she's aware of some other businesses in town that would be interested in, you know, investing in it, maybe fundraising for additional funds if need be, you know. So, and they're asking for a concrete park as well. So, yeah, I mean, that's kind of the information I have there on it. I don't know if you guys have any questions about any of the projects or dog park or skate park. I know I would love to be handing you quotes for everything and having the price in hand. The only thing I can say with the concrete is, you know, if we pay $14,500, we're going to get the design, we're going to get the construction docs, and it can go out to bid. And that's the only way we're going to get the official price for the concrete is once it goes out to bid. No one wants to give you an estimate so that you can give it to another company to do their job for them, unless you pay for those design services up front. And again, like I said, I've already met with two companies to come out and look at the trees, and you know, I told them about the meeting tonight, but no dice.
I just have a question, Craig, on the, you mentioned the $14,500. So you can't hire a different firm to do just give them $14,500 to develop the plan. You have to pay a firm $14,500 to develop the plan. Then they'll tell you how much they're going to charge.
So the two that I've talked to, the one where I have, they were able to do a rendering for me, concrete rendering for $2,400. They won't do the actual design specs and construction documents unless you pay for those services up front.
I got you. Yeah, so our biggest challenge as a board is recognizing that if we want to move to concrete, the cost is 2.5 times what was originally agreed to. So, yeah, I think what I'm hearing is you're making really good progress on getting the information, which is, I think, the purpose of this. Andy, was to say, hey, what projects are moving forward? Let's put some specifics down. Do we feel confident we'll be able to get contracts and commitments, well secured well before the end of the year. And it seems like that you're doing a good job, Craig, of getting that, moving down that path. So, I mean, I think are you looking for something from us tonight on these particular items, or is it really just providing an update that you're making some good progress on trying to get the exact numbers?
I
And
think there's a little bit of both, right? I mean, I think, to tell you that we are working on this, but at some point, if we're gonna need extra funding, I mean, we have to make a decision at some point somehow.
all right, so I guess at some point you need to tell us sort of what the timeline on that is, because I don't, the intent of tonight wasn't to make a decision. I don't think because again, we budgeted for 145 and you're talking well over 300,000 at least.
Right.
Because clearly what I'm hearing is that, ideally concrete would be the path to take, because nobody seems to want the modular. But I wasn't thinking we were going to be talking about, adding, in essence, most of our entire reserve would have to go to this tonight. And I didn't think we were going to be doing that tonight, but I do need to know when we need to have that discussion, and with plenty of time, so there isn't too much pressure on you to move this forward. So I guess I would just ask you what the timeline is of when you really need a decision, because again, it's not a small amount of money that we need here. It's almost our entire reserve, which I think we need a certain amount of discussion before we make that.
We know how long it would take for them to do the design specification.
I don't, one of the companies who put together the rendering did it relatively quick. And the skate committee was happy with that rendering. So if we went forward with that specific rendering, we should be able to get their construction docs, relatively quick, and then use that to go out to bid. So it could be, a relatively quick turnaround if they're interested in doing that for us. Yeah.
So if the board's comfortable, I think in terms of an update, I think this is an excellent update, and we continue the next steps in the discussion. But in the interest of time, because obviously we're well past sort of our normal time, we have a number of other items to discuss. I'm comfortable moving forward with the next items, unless somebody wants to discuss this in more detail.
I just would put it out there that I understand that tonight is tonight and we have to get through our agenda, but we also, it's June 6th. You know what I mean? So I don't want to keep pushing decisions, because we're sitting here giving, department heads a ration because they're not providing us with quotes. But at the same time, now we have a department head that is saying, I kind of would like a little bit of guidance on how to move forward. And we're, on the fence. So I understand what you're saying, Pete. I think I'm fine with moving through the rest of the items to see what else is on the horizon. But I do not want to conclude tonight's meeting without some decisions being made, if that's acceptable.
Specific to the skate park, or just other decisions?
Specific to any of the questions.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
if I may, I've been trying to raise my hand. I don't know if you.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see it, Andy. It's hard to be remote here.
So I think once we go through all the other items, there's gonna be just a certain few of these are the couple that are gonna shake out. Then I think at the end of this, you can go back and give some guidance or decision, but a lot of these are gonna be pretty well moving along. So this is one. I think there's another one that we can consider what we're gonna do, but the rest of them are pretty much nailed down for this tonight's update. So I think it shouldn't be that big of a lift when we get done to go back to a certain few.
Okay, sounds good.
If I may, just one other project that we had on there was the trails that hadn't been approved. We actually would like to just remove that and look for grant opportunities in the future so that we can have a little better planning ahead of time. So, so that one, I'd like to just strike through if possible.
And there's all kinds of state money coming down the pipe for trails.
Okay.
All right, well, I'll hang
Thank
out.
you.
Yeah, I'll hang out if there's other questions.
Sure. Thank you, Craig.
Thank you, Craig.
And Matt is up next. He's gonna go over the Pendleton Drive pedestrian bridge briefly. That's out. Peter's House accessibility, Hebron Center signage, important house name. So,
Good. So Pendleton, I don't think there's too much to say, right? So that was a steep grant that required a town match. The town match was going to be provided in design services. Those have been performed. And there will be some construction administration associated with the developer, the construction of the bridge and the sidewalks, but that's built into the grant. So we should be good there. I have to be honest with you, as much as I have this beautiful vision that I'm not, as good a drawer or illustrator as like my kids are and stuff, I really have a beautiful vision for the corner of Gilead and West Main, kind of on the town hall corner here, for a really nice community event signage board. I don't think that's going to materialize within the deadline. I just think that the hurdles that we face dealing with DOT, in terms of permitting, and there's a fair amount of design work. I think what my attempts to work with the very qualified individual that I reached out to, we just weren't on the same page, and I wasn't getting what I needed. So I'm kind of suggesting that I don't think that's going to be a realistic accomplishment within the framework or with the time frame of this this timeline. So if with the board's permission, look, if it's a super top priority for anybody, I will press on and I would do what I can. I just think because of the other maybe needs, that this is probably some funding that we could allocate to a different purpose. That was $10,000 in design services, and I think it was $35,000 in construction services.
yeah, total of 45,000.
So with the board's permission, my recommendation is that we strike that one. Just unfortunately, I just don't. It's going to be too tall an order, and I just don't have enough information from DOT to give you guys the impression that this is going to happen.
I can help you out on that, just to clarify some. So the bridge is all set. The bridge is gonna be out to bid today. So that's should be no problem. That's moving forward, contracted. What Matt's trying to say is dealing with the state, they want us to actually lease that property. There's a whole process and real estate transaction thing we have to enter into it. It's very cumbersome, red tape, bureaucratic thing. So knowing all this now, we don't think we're gonna meet that time frame. So 45,000 back. So I didn't mean to interrupt you, but
No, I think that's accurate. I just expressed exactly what some of the challenges we're facing with that corner. I mean, I still think it would be beautiful. I really think, again, when I talk about Hebron being unique, kind of like, setting a standard, I look at some of the things I see in other communities and I'm like, forget it. We could do way better. I have visions of like, stone, edges and just a cool option, but I think we'll have to make that happen some other way. That being said, I am moving along with the Horton House improvements. So we have some structural concerns that came out of the facilities conditions assessment. And we hired BL Companies, one of our 3 on-call architects, which I solicited each one for proposals. The only one that was viable that came back was from BL Companies. They're coming next week to start the analysis. That should lead to some recommendations for how we're going to shore up the building. So I know in that, I think it was 81 plus, something along those lines. 81.6, that I requested for more than just the structural improvements. I'm hoping that I still have some room to paint the north side of the building, to address some of the landscape concerns, maybe, do a couple of the cosmetic things that are long overdue in the interior of the building. Still smells like the cat that used to live in the building. Not to mention the mice that are not being caught by that cat anymore. But at a minimum, we can start there. If it takes all 81, at least we'll have a building that's standing. you know, and if we have some room, then we'll make it work. And then finally, the Peters House project. So this was originally framed as an accessibility project. Certainly it is, you know, has the potential for events, you know, accommodation. We hold meetings there as part of our Juneteenth activities. I think there's potential there. If for no other reason, to really tell an interesting story about Hebron's history, and it relates a lot to what's been on high priority in terms of unearthing more information on our Indigenous and our African American roots, you know, and presence in town. So it really is an important part of Hebron's history and part of Hebron's story. And let's face it, we've made the investment up to this point. We got to finish it. So, except in terms of accessibility, the idea was to provide driveway access with some accessible parking spaces. The project has evolved a little bit to hopefully, I think we're good on all the same page, but you know, the Historic Properties Commission has been offered a country carpenter's barn to be constructed on site. So this access will provide access to that, and that could be incorporated into the activity that's going on there. So I have an estimate for $22,000 for the paving and the surfacing of the access, which I think is a pretty good number. That would include 3 handicap parking spaces and 5 unfinished regular parking spaces, a paved route and a gravel access that would provide the rest of the route to the barn. The catch with the barn is that we're on the hook for the foundation. Got a really good number on a foundation of 16,000. Then in terms of an accessible route, you're going to provide handicap parking spaces. That's all well and good, but you now need an accessible route to the building to get inside. So I don't have a number for it, but I'm going to give myself $10,000 for sidewalk or whatever surface treatment we provide from the parking spaces to the ramp. So that's 40, what is it, 48? 48. We budgeted 100. My request is, at a minimum, as we continue to have the structural engineer do the work that is necessary to determine what improvements are necessary to the building, so we can move forward with the improvement of the building, that at a minimum, the balance of that 100 be allocated to the structural improvements that are recommended by the structural engineer that we're paying now and is actively analyzing the improvement project. So that would be, and here's why I say that. John Menard is a member of the Hebron Historic Properties Commission. He and 2 of the other members of the Historic Properties Commission did a thorough walkthrough and walkabout of the Peters House and wrote item by item what they anticipate are the needs, the improvements that are necessary to complete the job, and how much those would cost. He's a contractor. He does historic restoration projects, and I think he's a pretty good and conservative estimator for this purpose. He has an evaluation, hold on, your seats, of $143,400 to complete the Peters House. That's the house, okay? So if we take 50 for the structural improvements, maybe we get a little further on than just that. But say if we have 50, that would leave 93,400. So my thought is that if I have at least the 50,000 reserved for the building, I will utilize that. Granted, we'll have to sign the contract for those improvements to be underway before the end of the year, but I will utilize that as a match for a preservation grant, which we have some indication from SHPO and from Preservation CT as a circuit rider that we have a good chance of getting funding for. So I know it's a lot to think about, but I'm certain that we could spend it if the Peters House remained the priority, which I think, you know, it is, and certainly something that we want to leave from that. So that's my report.
Okay, thank you, Matt. What's left on?
Okay, so we have the active shooter training and police vehicle classroom toolkits. There's a few thousand left and Mark Rivera is working on finishing that up. The police accreditation, that is going to cover the remaining lease for the Power DMS software. So we're working on those payments. The police tasers have been ordered and that amount was increased by the selectmen at the last meeting. So we're waiting for those to come in.
I have some questions about this building on what we talked about a couple weeks ago about the school resource officers having tasers. So I have some questions about that, protocols, policies, procedures, extra insurance, specialized training, et cetera. I'd like to present a list of questions that I have. Who would be the right person to come and answer those?
Well, present them to me and I'll bring them to the police. But the selectmen have already approved the
No, I know
purchases
that.
here. I just want to make that.
Yeah, I'm not.
Yeah, just send it to Andy and he'll structure the right folks to come and address those as a separate agenda item to make sure you get, or address them independent of a meeting. But yeah, just send them to Andy and he'll get the right folks involved.
I got
Okay.
an insurance company.
Yeah.
Responses from them, whatever your questions are.
Mhm.
Yeah, that may have to be addressed, like you said, Pete, independent of a meeting because security protocols are not public information.
Okay, good point. So yeah, just I'd send your questions to Andy and we'll, obviously all work together to get what you need and then address them in the appropriate format. And so thank you, Keith, for that. That's a good point about that's not public information, how we train in those, obviously because your time on the board, you're aware of that. So, okay. Good.
On the Old Town Hall improvements, you can see the windows boarded up. We got an update from them that their 6 windows have been removed. They will be returned. The rest will come out. And they are working on getting painting done. They have submitted a request for additional funding if there's any money that we're looking to spend elsewhere. They're looking for a total of an additional $38,600 for Burrows Hill School plastering, Old Town Hall plastering, the interior ceilings, painting, and scaffolding. And then we got an update from them for the cemetery repairs. They have signed a contract with the gravestone repair company, and they have a list of several gravestones that are going to be repaired. And that's contract was for $11,200.
When was that signed?
I don't have a date that it's.
It just needs to be reflected in the spreadsheet.
Right.
They just got me that information yesterday.
Yeah. I was on vacation for 2 weeks and came back today, so I didn't have time to update the spreadsheet.
And like I said, I thought I'd get that sooner than today. She
Yeah.
said I'll have it for Thursday. We got it.
Yeah,
this morning.
that's why I never go on vacation for 2 weeks because you don't want to come back.
You're not kidding.
Yeah. So I got it as current as I could, but there's only so many hours in a day.
I can find that out.
The CERT vehicle, Paul Bancroft is working with Columbia Ford on sourcing a vehicle and getting that equipped. So
That's one we're struggling with.
Right.
Because
Yeah.
originally we're gonna revamp a vehicle we had. The company gave him the quotes. It fit the venue. They went out of business. He took it to another place. They said a lot of the parts that we need to upgrade this thing are no longer obsolete due to the age of the vehicle. So now he's changed course and he's trying to locate a truck. So that one's in jeopardy, just to be clear.
Martin Road reconstruction, that money will be paid out for the engineer. The DPW radios have been ordered. The Gilead Hills Playscape is awaiting landscape architect and then planning and zoning final approvals. Green Committee has purchased 2 bike racks, and you'll notice that their amount of their current balance has changed from the last several months. We found that we needed to reallocate money, that we had taken money out of that account that should have been not from ARPA. So we restored that amount.
Okay.
And they do have about $5,500 remaining after the purchase of the bike racks. And the fire department active shooter tactical gear has been ordered and half of it has been received. We moved the generator for Stonecroft Housing down to completed projects because that final payment has been made. And we have added a new project on page 3, the Grayville Road Bridge for $150,500. And Andy can give you a little detail on that.
So that's just to be considered. We're looking for a funding source for that. And we'd like to get that done in this construction season. That's a dead end road. And that bridge services only 2 houses on the other side. But that was inspected by the state DOT, and a report came back that that's in poor condition and that would need to be replaced. So we went out to a company locally that does that type of work, and they came back with that price to do it. We didn't have that price for the budget season or CIP. That just came in last month, so we could hope that we could get a supplemental appropriation from Finance Department with approval from the Board of Selectmen. That would take going to a special town meeting, which would be another month or 2. So not knowing how this is going to shake out or how much money is going to come back or be moved around, I added that to this list just to be considered if possible.
That's on page 3.
Yes, well, of the new spreadsheet.
Yeah, it probably.
So
Okay.
I did
Sorry.
update the spreadsheet that's in
It's
the
on
agenda package, but not in. So it's up on the screen,
Okay.
not on the sheet you're looking.
Gotcha.
That was in the. Yeah. And I do.
Sorry, one thing on the approved by town attorney awaiting BOS approval. The PNR trail development, that's being removed, right?
Correct. And I do believe that is it.
Yeah, so Keith, to get back to your question, which was a good one. We have the issue with the skate park, we have the emergency vehicle upgrade for CERT, and then now you have possibly what Buddy just brought up, the trails being removed.
But now the trails weren't incorporated. We didn't approve the trails, did we?
Correct. That's not
Yeah,
really.
you just removing it. It wasn't, there's not.
Yeah.
Just taking them off the list, right? So that's not monies found. That's versus the signage, which we had for 45,000. Okay.
Turn the sign.
The sign pretty much washes out the dog park. So because the sign return was 45,000 and the additional expense for dog park was 45,000. So that pretty much washes.
43.
Ish.
Yeah.
Ish.
Ish. So right now, the total with the sign removed, the total ARPA funding in reserve would be 308,280.
And then if Matt's 50,000, if you guys were to allow him to use that towards the Peters house, that would be a decision you'd have to kind of make.
And then
All right,
potentially 150 would be going to the skate park if we went the concrete route, right?
About 108.
180.
Yeah, 180. Is that what it is? Okay, so
186.
At least
Or-
180.
at least, yeah, we don't really seem to know. the
It-
exact
It
numbers.
probably would be closer to the 200 mark, but yeah.
All right.
I'm sorry.
So
Matt, I hate to put you on the spot.
Yep.
But I was running into issues with the numbers on that. So this is when you were going over the original discussion, 22 for parking, 16 for foundation, 10 for sidewalk, left 52 for house improvements or structural improvements, right? That was based off of on page 1, the 100,000 allocation under ADA parking ramp, right? So that's where we got the 52 left over for structural improvements. But then you said the walkthrough came to 143.
Yeah, so,
So that leaves us with 93.
right, right.
Okay.
So my first request is we have money set aside for accessibility related to Peter's house,
Mhm.
keeping it in the Peter's house arena. Just to make sure that it's acceptable for the board, that it be utilized for for structural improvement purposes, which I have an engineer working on what those ultimately will be, but I don't have that information yet to get quotes on how much it's gonna cost. So at a minimum, I'm requesting to reserve that 52 for that purpose.
Mhm.
Now, that'll get us however deep into the 143 to complete the job.
Right.
And what I'm hoping is that I don't think I'll be able to leverage the accessibility improvements into a preservation grant, but perhaps I could leverage 52 into preservation grant to help us finish the interior. That brings us to what, 104 or something.
So you're, okay, so the 93 that was remaining, you're looking for at least half of that to leverage for the other half from the state.
Well, that would be, so I know I'm not being very clear. The walkthrough to complete the house is 143.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about what's gonna get us closer. You know, maybe it's not the whole job, but maybe it's closer. So first question for the 52. The 52, assuming I could leverage that against a state grant, is 50-50 match, so I can only get 104 total. However, you know, if it remains a priority and there's some flex, you know, some additional fund monies floating around that we're not exactly sure what to do with, I want to kind of put on the table that if we want to utilize the cost estimate provided by our Properties Commission, to get us as close as possible to an end game on Peter's house. Those are my numbers to do that. And what I'm hoping to do, again, is leverage that grant. I actually have a meeting on June 17th with SHPO and Preservation CT Circuit Rider, where I'll get more, I should have more information on whether or not that's realistic.
Okay, I mean, I don't know about the other selectmen, but I'm fine with you using the 52 from that original allocation that's left over, you know, for whatever leveraging or projects that will bring the house to completion. You know, but my concern is that, you know, we're still not at that price tag. So are you asking for additional beyond the 100 that's allocated? Because on page 3, there is another like wish list request.
Yeah.
Are we still asking for that to kind of make this all happen, or what's?
I would say yes, but I'm also trying to be realistic. I'm trying to juggle what I know are other needs. And I don't know. I don't know if this is going to be shared with everybody. I just don't know how it stacks up in terms of priorities with the other. So I'm half of the mind to say, you know, let's it's a skate park. Let's really get it done. Let's get it done well. So I kind of want to leave that flexibility, but
Okay.
I think maybe with some more information, I could kind of shed some more light on that, whether or not I can actually get there. And maybe, so if it's 143 and I have 52 and I need a 50-50, what's that make? I need 72. So maybe there's a compromise, maybe there's middle ground, maybe I ask for additional 20.
Okay.
Okay, so maybe we can think about this in bites, to Keith's point about getting some things accomplished today in terms of thinking about our 308, 280, the asks. If I add them up correctly, well, I didn't update it what Matt just said, but we had the bridge that got Andy suggested to consider. We have the skate park, we have the dog park gap, and then we have the Peters House gap. I think with 308,000, would the board be agreeable to maybe address a couple of these tonight? Especially, let's go back to the skate park. It's a big gap, and it's a big ask and it's important. And a lot of information has been prepared. So I would suggest that maybe we go at that right now, because that's a big item. We had 308,000, and if we agree to the 186, if that number is correct, I mean, that obviously that's well over half of what we have left. So maybe we look at a couple of the items tonight that are important that we keep moving forward. And then we penned a couple, maybe the Peters House pending that for maybe the next meeting, or depending on how other things shake out, as well as do we have any monies for the bridge? And we also heard some more at the old town hall. But to me, maybe we can address a couple of big rocks, so to speak, tonight, or at least the skate park. I think it sounds like we should at least discuss that, if the board's okay with that as a starting point for these, for the next step here.
Could I speak, Dan Larson?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead, Dan.
I've been asking for the Peters House money literally for months. We've got volunteers that are willing to go and start, working on this project. Nothing has been done in, I'm not even sure, possibly a year, because there's not been any funds. We're going to lose these volunteers, and this is a project that's been going on, God, maybe 18, 20 years, maybe. I don't know. We got to start getting these things done. I really want to at least get that initial ask of money allocated so that we can get rolling on these things. We just keep pushing it down the road.
Well, I mean, we have a substantial amount of money to the Peters House already, so it's not like there isn't money there. Now, it's not for everything, but it's not like we don't have money approved for the Peters House. We have $100,000 to the Peters House.
What's been approved?
Peters House accessibility, the parking, the ramp out for $100,000.
Have we approved it, or is it still in the process of being?
It's approved.
Yeah.
Now, there's multiple Peters House asks, Dan, in all fairness.
Okay.
But we have approved the $100,000 Peters House accessibility. We have $100,000 approved, and the balance that's remaining is $98,708. I'm just looking at the spreadsheet that Donna has up on.
Okay, see, I don't have that spec sheet.
Yeah, no. So no, there's $100,000 already into the Peters House that's approved and moving forward. Unless, Andy, I'm misreading that, or Don, I mean, that's.
You're right. That's been approved for a while. They were having a tough time deciding how they wanted that parking lot to look. There's also money in some CIP accounts to do some stuff as well.
Okay, because I was kind of under the impression that there were, at this point in time, no funds available to go forward with anything. So I could be mistaken, but.
Well, clearly we heard that he might need more money, but to Andy's point and what we're talking about here, there's still a couple of chunks of money that have been allocated to the Peters House project. And as you said, because it's been going on so long, there's a lot of moving parts with that project. So there are clearly funds already allocated and approved for it, and there's an ask for more money. That's why I was suggesting that maybe that's something that we can at least hold off for tonight, because there's already other funds allocated and being expended towards that project. Doesn't mean it can't come up next week. I'm just trying to check a couple of things off. It's almost 10 o'clock. So I'm just trying to say, there's a couple.
Yep.
So I'm not trying to minimize it. I'm just saying, maybe we'll talk about the skate park, because that's such a big number. And I'm clearly hearing concrete's the way to go. I mean, that seems to be clear. But
yeah, I agree. And I would at least approve, the spending of the money similar to the fire department, so that we can actually get some, I hate to say concrete numbers.
Good one.
I'm sorry.
Good, that's all right. I laughed. Okay, but I guess but think about this, and just for discussion here, is we also heard that there might be some potential fundraising and other funds that potentially could be raised because of the interest in the community. So do we just have to think about what's the amount? Seems like there's still some subjectivity to those amounts because we don't have the final design and the final. We have sort of an idea. So we could approve an increase, a substantially increased amount, and the idea that we're going to move forward with concrete, knowing that we may have to tweak that as we go forward, or it could be potentially reduced depending on the fundraising. So I don't, do you want to talk about a number here that everyone's comfortable with for the concrete? Is anyone not comfortable moving forward with the concrete design? I guess that's the first thing, because that seems clear to me, but there's a cost associated with it. Is anyone uncomfortable with the concrete proposal as the way to go here based on cost?
I agree with concrete.
Claudia?
Concrete?
Okay, Tiffany, any objection to at least moving forward on the concrete
No
discussion?
objection. No
Okay.
objection. Thank you.
Okay, so to the board then, do we want to allocate, we have $308,280. Do we want to allocate $186,000 of that? Do we want to allocate some substantive increase with the idea that we still might have some fundraising and some final numbers, some lesser amount to give us some flexibility? What's everyone's thought? I'll start with Keith. Where is your head on that?
Yeah, I'm willing to go with the conservative estimate you came up with. It was 180, whatever.
186 I wrote down. I don't know if that's accurate.
186.
That's what I wrote down.
I'm fine with the 186. I mean, I think, by the time we get through some of the other hurdles, maybe it might be a little bit over, but to your point, I think that there's other fundraising opportunities to cover that, but at least to get it kind of allocated, yes, I would go with that number at this point.
Okay, Tiffany,
186 is good with me. Thank you.
Claudia, thank you.
186 is good with me also.
Okay, Dan?
I'd go 150 and see if these other groups would be willing to raise the other 36.
Okay.
If we're going to fund it all, then where's there any incentive for these other entities to want to raise a penny?
I say something.
Of course.
I don't, this just came to me about the fundraising, so I don't know how realistic.
Right.
Right,
It is, or really how we even manage it as a town when it comes to that.
Yeah, and honestly, if we're going to look at this realistically, I would prefer to engage those types of activities, and RAM has been a good custodian of some of their assets. They have boosters and other nonprofit organizations that do things on the side. If they were to contribute to ongoing repairs, because like you said, every year there's going to be a little bit of cracking here, a little bit of painting there. If they even contributed to that to lessen the town's obligation over future years, I would be happy with just that.
We're going to rely heavily on the Ram Skate Club.
Yep.
Take, strong presence at this park, and take ownership over it. So I'd imagine, and I believe the teacher has already spoken about trying to put together a similar booster club
Nice.
for it so that
Yep.
they can do fundraising for it. So, but it's very new, these ideas. I'm just
Right.
worried if,
Right.
if we need that additional 36, when and how are we going to get it?
Yeah.
Or if it does come over this 330 number that I have, maybe that's where we can, even if it's a couple dollars here and there, that we might be able to squeeze that out of.
Yeah, again, to your point, I'd be more inclined for us to pay the bulk of it. And if they want to add a memorial rail and fundraise for a memorial rail to be put in, then that's on them. But I think that, as the town and this becoming a town asset, we should fund the conservative number. If there's overages, then we can deal with that when those arise. But yeah, I would fund the conservative number and just, engage these other organizations in ongoing operations.
Okay. And my bias would be the same. I think, Dan, you make a good point, but my bias with what Craig's comments were in terms of some of the unknowns is I would agree with Keith. I would rather fund the 186 and then sort of close the gap. And then there should be other opportunities to think about how best to utilize the services of the community, both RAM and the business community, because it seems like this project still needs some more definition ultimately. And so I think this will continue to come up, but I'd rather close the gap with the number that we have, especially since everyone's in agreement with concrete. So I think you make a good point, but that's where I am on that. And so the other item, do we want to close the gap somewhat on the dog park? Because, obviously Craig's moving forward with getting the tree information. There's more work there, but we know that 50,000 is not enough. So is the board willing to consider throwing some of that money at the dog park, at least at this juncture, to make it a little bit more realistic in terms of the pricing? And obviously there's some more information to follow, but letting it sit at 50, we know that's not the number. And so that obviously can be changed later, or, wherever the road takes us. But I would suggest that we at least consider putting up something there, knowing that that gap needs to be closed somewhat compared to what we had as original estimate.
Yeah, I think for now, I think that our motion should be to transfer the funds previously allocated for Hebron Center signage to Hebron Dog Park, since it's a very similar dollar amount.
Okay, and that down at that exact amount?
Donna's giving me weird looks now. I know I did something wrong.
No, you didn't do anything wrong. It's
Okay.
just priorities, but.
Okay, all right.
But 43 was the number,
43,000. Okay.
right? 45 is what we took from the signs. But I was just gonna suggest we maybe discuss the Grayville Road Bridge before we make a decision on the dog.
Okay. What was the price tag on that, Andy? I'm sorry.
55, I believe.
150,500.
Yeah.
So 150,000.
Okay, so if ARPA doesn't fund the Grayville Bridge, then you're looking for an appropriation. I mean, let's go through the funding options.
Okay, so I wasn't gonna consider putting the bridge in ARPA, but having conversations with the finance director after the recent budget where the Board of Finance added another 500,000 from the unassigned fund balance, and they transferred $1 million into the debt management within a 12-month period, because they did $1 million before. Everybody saw that 25% as a big number, but 25% of what? So we're already almost down to that 18% comfort line we agreed upon, and we're still nowhere in the deficit. We're over budget this year, and we got to come up with a supplemental. And the school has a couple of items that we kind of alluded to that we were going to kind of fund. So I'm not sure, with closing out this year and trying to help out the school with the air conditioning and the PA system, and now we have the state of Connecticut's notified us that we have a bridge in poor condition with 2 residents on the other side. God forbid if something ever happened, we'd be liable. I didn't have that information prior to CIP requested budget. I just got it in the last couple of weeks.
Andy, I have a question on the CERT vehicle replacement. That's been here almost 2 years. July 21st, 2022 was approved. How certain are you that those funds are going to be actually used to purchase the vehicle?
Yes, thank you. I kind of mentioned that, and to re-echo what I said, in his defense, not for lack of trying, but to start this late in the game, just try to locate a truck and get it outfitted and stuff, that could be something the board should act on. I'm not trying to suggest we take it away from him, from my opinion, but he has worked diligently, and
That's his, I don't know if you want to.
go ahead, you can read it.
You want me to, this is from Paul and it goes into the detail. Okay. So efforts to replace the CERT vehicle have been complicated by a COVID-induced shortage and backlog of truck vehicle chassis, particularly those used in the manufacture of ambulances and delivery vehicles. Our initial plan was to purchase a used ambulance to replace our current CERT vehicle. However, the chassis shortage created a multi-year wait for new ambulance deliveries. As an example, Andover Fire Department ordered a new ambulance last summer and are still almost 2 years from delivery. And that was one he was
We were gonna
hoping
try
we
to buy
could
that.
buy Andover's, but that doesn't work. So this meant that emergency services with an immediate need for replacement vehicle had to buy used ambulances to fill the gap, which caused the price of used ambulance to skyrocket. out of our price range. The next plan was to refurbish our current vehicle instead. Eastford Emergency Vehicles inspected our truck on site, then took it to their facility for an in-depth inspection to be followed by a quote for the refurbishment. However, they never came back through with the quote, citing various problems with staffing, manpower, etc. When it became clear they weren't going to get us in a reasonable time frame, I took our truck to another fire apparatus refurbishment facility, Bulldog Fire Apparatus. Unfortunately, they declined to do the work, saying our truck was too old to obtain the necessary parts. Further attempts to find a suitable used vehicle or refitter in our price range have been unsuccessful. We are now in the process of sourcing and building a new truck from scratch. I am awaiting a quote from Columbia Ford Gates Auto for a chassis with an enclosed utility body attached. Bulldog Fire Apparatus has provided an estimate for installation of the battery maintainer and 120-volt wiring. Cody Porter is providing an estimate for the in-house installation of emergency lighting, and George Delaman has tentatively agreed to do this striping lettering pending details on the truck dimensions. He did the lettering for our current truck at a reasonable price. Marcus Communications will do the radio installs. All parties are aware of the need to get the project moving forward as soon as possible. Based on my conversations with these vendors, I expect we can obtain a suitable vehicle and contract out all the necessary upfitting work by this fall. Respectfully submitted, Paul Bancroft.
What's the date of that letter?
That's recent. That's for my,
It's updated yesterday, 6/5/24.
for the board second, I did as Peter alluded at the beginning of this, I did a blast to everybody that had projects that we needed. Most up to date, I think, for the selectmen tonight.
I mean, what can we take from that letter that's gonna give us confidence that all these different projects are gonna all come together in 6 months?
And what's the price tag on that? Because to his point, that is building an ambulance from scratch by contracting out all the different things that a normal ambulance builder would do. And I'm thinking that the price tag's gonna come in slightly above what going through a normal ambulance outfitter would be.
I
So
think he's being realistic. He's just trying to supply you with an updated, trying not to lose his money, but he also knows that we're crunch time too, so.
yeah, but I understand he's not trying to lose his money, but I think once he got quotes for all that, it would be significantly north of
Yeah,
where he currently is.
And we don't have those at this point.
Right, right.
Can we give them like a, you have to have something to us realistically in 30 days, 60 days?
I don't know if
I
that's
don't,
realistic.
yeah,
Exactly.
but that's,
I mean, he's been pretty resourceful in trying to purchase an ambulance from Andover, but like they said, that's delayed 2 years, so that's not gonna fit the time frame. So he's scrambling is what you can read in that letter.
yeah, yeah.
So we have that, we have back to the bridge. I'm a little reluctant to take ARPA projects that have been approved off to fund, in effect, a CIP item or a time. I mean, we have a maintenance issue and a bridge that needs to be fixed. No question. I mean, we don't want anyone to be unsafe. But is ARPA the funding mechanism in which to do that? It clearly takes pressure off. However, we're then going to be taking something off that's been previously approved. And again, ARPA funds are intended for a lot of things, but how we moved forward with this was doing some things that would probably likely never see the light of day in any other budget season. Like, things like pickleball courts and things like that, and all the improvements, all the wonderful work that's being done. And so I'm a little reluctant to say, hey, let's just, keep finding ways to spend ARPA money on other things that come up. We should have funding mechanisms available to us to be able to address emergencies like that come up, and taking off things that might seem not important. Yeah, relative to a safe bridge, a skate park's not more important. A signage or dog park's not more important. The Peters house isn't more important than a safe bridge. So, but that's not the point. The point is, how do we want to spend our ARPA money? And is it simply a funding mechanism for other stuff I hesitate to take things off when we should have funding mechanisms available, even though currently, as Andy suggested, we have some pressures that have been put upon us that you've articulated. But I'm
You
not
hit
a
it on
big-
the head. I'm in agreement with you. So in case we have at the end of the day, the money's left over, that could be something that could get funded. So
Sure.
we added that.
Yeah, we can
knowing
leave it
that-
on that for sure. I'm personally not ready to move on that tonight. Because I know that if you had an emergency, you would obviously the town would deal with it, with the pressure that came from it. But again, it's just me speaking here.
Every
But
penny,
so-
remember Keith's quote, every penny's gotta get spent.
Oh yeah,
That was
no, we're
just
not,
in case.
not every dollar. I was corrected. He's right. Every penny. Okay, but again, we don't have to do all this tonight, but we want to move some significant things forward. So, are we not agreeing on the dog park? Look, Keith started with that, and then we started talking about the bridge, and I want to get back to that. Are we willing to put more money into the dog park of the surplus, at least to close that gap at this juncture, or do we want to table that as we think about some of these other items? We've obviously clearly agreed on the removal of the signage money for Matt's recommendation, the addition of the skate park dollars that will go into the motion, and we'll see how that vote prevails. Do you want to, the board does want to take any more action on either the additional monies towards the dog park, or do you want to not do that at this juncture? I think Keith mentioned yes. I would be in agreement with that, but I haven't heard from the other three members on their thought on that. So I'll just, if I go around the room, so to speak, Tiffany,
That's fine with me.
Claudia,
Agree. Move forward,
And?
42,000, yeah.
okay.
Well, we got to get the prices. So, we got to move forward as if, we're going forward. But once we actually hear the final numbers, we can, similar to the firehouse, the more we move forward, the more expensive it got
Yeah.
to the point where we just said, this is just not an economic reality. And maybe we'll get lucky and be surprised with, the numbers, removing the trees and doing some of the other things. And maybe we can beat up the fence company a little bit. I don't know.
Okay.
But
again, we can obviously we can pivot as need be, but at least from what we know today, from what's been reported, we know there's a gap. So we
Exactly.
close the gap. And then if again, all of a sudden the real price, everything comes out and it's way more and we have to say too much, or we cap our, what we're going to do, or we remove it. Obviously the board has that right to have those discussions as we move forward. But at least at this juncture, putting money in to close what we know of as the gap relative to the prices we've been given for at least the fence at this juncture. Okay. And is there any other item that we want to take action on tonight? I'll start with Keith, because you made a good point about let's make sure we're taking some action. Is there anything else that you want to make sure we talked about tonight in terms of making decisions?
Well, those are the ones that I think we need to make decisions on. As far as I did have a couple of comments just before we wrap back to motions and get done for the evening. I would like to see Parks and Rec put a chainsaw in every skater's hands and get them out there cutting trees. But but anyways. Matt, there were two items that were planning and zoning. I know we were kind of going quickly at the end there. The Gilead Hill Playscape, is that on the planning and zoning agenda coming up? And then Green Committee Special Projects has a note about planning and zoning. Are they waiting on an official vote from them? It says the bike racks.
At one point, they were supposed to run the bike racks. right?
That's actually here, right? Yeah, that was a project at a scale that we can administratively approve, so we're all set with that.
Okay, so it did not have to wait on planning and zoning.
No.
Okay, perfect.
They're at a stage where actually we just need to install.
They purchased them, yeah, I think they're being shipped soon.
Okay. Yep.
Okay.
You should see them anytime. It should be right over here someplace.
Perfect.
And then the Gilead Hill. So we actually, when I spoke to her earlier this week, we're having a landscape consultant provide some conceptual approaches to the accessible route that we need to make to this playground.
Yep.
So once that information comes in, We already had a site meeting. Tom Fenton's gonna put that into a site plan, and then we can review it with the planning and zoning commission. So that equipment has been purchased, but in terms of its
Right.
installation, we have a little bit of, we just have to go through the burn process.
Okay, so it's not ready to go before the commission yet, but are we shooting for like a July meeting or a?
I think the July meeting is a reasonable target. You know, in the summer they break, so
Yeah.
typically PCC meets twice, but they only have one meeting in July and one meeting in August. So it'll be one of those 2 meetings, I anticipate. But the equipment's been
Already
purchased,
purchased, so we own it.
Okay,
we own it. So all we, you know, so we theoretically have the time frame to install.
It's going somewhere. If it doesn't end up going in, which I think it's going to, we own it, we're gonna put it somewhere.
okay,
So that's committed.
sounds good.
That's all I was trying to say about the tasers too.
Mhm.
Committed.
Okay. And with that being done, I think we can go to motions for stuff we need to motion.
So is it easier
Again,
I'm sorry, go ahead, Keith.
Yeah, again, I'm fine with making a motion for putting the 45 into the 42. Whatever number Donna wants me to put into the dog
think
park,
it's
I will put into the dog.
40.
Yeah.
Frank's
43.
number was a total of 93.
Yeah, so I'm fine with making a motion to pull back the previous funding allocated to the Hebron Center signage and add an additional 43,000 to the dog park project.
And would you like to continue that motion to add the skate park money and we'll do it in one? Or do you want it separately?
Let's wrap this one up and then we'll get there.
Okay, motion's been read. I'll move the question. We've had a substantive discussion. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Those opposed, nay. Or if you wish to abstain, Keith?
Keith Pettit, aye.
Thank you, Keith. Dan?
Dan Larson, aye.
Thank you, Claudia.
Claudia Riley, aye.
Claudia, Tiffany?
Tiffany Teely, aye.
Peter Casper, aye. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Keith, would you like to continue with an additional motion?
Sure. On the skate park, I would make a motion to allocate an additional 186,000 for the Veterans Skate Park project.
Could you just make a friendly amendment to have you just add the word concrete in there? So sort of clarify.
Sorry. Yes. Let me just start from scratch. I'll make a motion to have Parks and Rec move forward with the construction of a concrete skate park at Veterans Park and allocate an additional $186,000 to that project.
Thank you. Motion's been read. I'll move the question based on substantive prior discussion. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Those opposed, nay. Or if you wish to abstain, please note that as well. Keith?
Keith Pettit, aye.
Thank you. Dan?
Dan Larson, aye.
Thank you, Claudia.
Claudia Riley, aye.
Thank you, Tiffany.
Tiffany Teely, aye.
Thank you, Peter Casper. Aye. The motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much. And I think that wraps up that piece of it. And again, thanks to Donna, to Andy for continuing to stay on top of all the moving parts associated with this project and moving a lot of these forward and keeping it organized and clear and on our agenda. So thank you for doing that and all the good work there. Okay. So, Mr. Tierney, that would then, I have to look back at my agenda, my phone here, if I've got it right. Moves to the Department of Public. So that's 8B then, Mr. Tierney, if to get everyone up to speed. Okay.
Department of Public Works.
I will provide, I will provide it. I have no substantive update and will provide one at the next meeting after our next meeting. So I am fine moving forward on that unless anyone has any questions. Okay.
Good.
That moves us to 8C, which would be any other new business. Start with Mr. Tierney, any other new business?
And you're not.
None. Okay. Anyone else on the board want to bring in a new business to the agenda that hasn't already been discussed? Okay. Great. That moves us then to 9D.
9D, approve and sign tax rate bill. The Board of Finance set the mill rate at their meeting on May 30th, 2024. That's as a tax rate bill prepared by the revenue collector. The rate bill will need to be signed by each board member no later than June 30th, 2024, and there's a proposed motion.
Yeah, I'll move that the Board of Selectmen approve and sign the tax rate bill dated May 31st, 2024, as presented by the revenue collector. Any discussion? Okay, we'll move to a vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Those opposed, nay, or if you wish to abstain, please note that as well. Keith?
Keith Pettit, aye.
Thank you. Dan?
Dale Larson, aye.
Thank you, Claudia.
Claudia Riley, aye.
Thank you, Claudia. Tiffany?
Tiffany Teely, aye.
Thank you, Tiffany. Peter Casper, aye. The motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much. All right, Mr. Tierney. Next, looks like 9E, which is our draft agenda. So as always, there's a draft agenda for anything else you'd like to add or address, correct, anything like that, please direct those inquiries, information over to the town manager's office. Thank you so much. Any other new business that should come before the board tonight, Mr. Tierney?
I do not.
Anyone else on the board?
No.
Okay. So thank you, Donna. So 10 would be the consent agenda. Move that the Board of Hebron approve the following consent agenda items and motions contained therein as if individually adopted. We have just one item, unless I missed something, one item, which is the 9A1 May 16, 2024 regular meeting. Does anybody have anything?
I'll move that the Board of Selectmen approve the following consent agenda items and motion contains therein.
Okay, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Those opposed, nay, or if you wish to abstain, please note that as well. Keith?
Keith Pettit, aye.
Thank you. Dan?
Dale Larson, aye.
Thank you, Claudia.
Claudia Riley, aye.
Thank you, Claudia. Tiffany?
Tiffany Teely, I abstain.
He abstains. Peter Casper votes aye. The motion passes with 4 aye and 1 abstention. Thank you very much. That will then move us to liaison reports. 11 on those following on the agenda. I do not have an update. We'll move to Tiffany if there's anything you wish to share with the board on the Board of Education.
I have no update either. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. Mr. Larson, Board of Finance.
No update, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Larson. Land Acquisition, Mr. Pettit.
Land acquisition met last night. They discussed some items related to the Zimmer property and had some general discussion, but no motions or proposals.
Thank you, Rand Board of Ed, Ms. Riley.
I have nothing to report tonight.
Thank you so much. Donna, we're moving to 12, which is public comment. So who do we have for public comment?
Who's left?
And the gentleman in the audience,
The only guy in the audience.
state your name and your address for the record.
All right, I can't see you. I'm sorry. So I see you now. So yes, sir.
Jason Guidon, 94 Cone Road. A couple of comments about the presentations. So social media from, I forget who was doing it, but promoting businesses potentially could get into some perception of favor of one over the other. I had a question, are there examples of other towns doing this already? And then have we reached out to any towns for guidance regarding that? Visibility of a page versus a business page versus a group. I don't know how that works, if we need to promote it or if people just find it, or if it comes off our town website, that sort of thing. Skate park. I know Bristol installed a concrete skate park probably over a decade ago, and I wondered if we reached out to them. It's not here now, but we can put it in the notes and pass it on. Regarding upkeep, maintenance, use, a variety of other things, a vendor they might have used as well. And I'm assuming aside from Bristol, there are other communities that have done the same. What are their experiences? What's the maintenance 5, 10, 15 years down the road? And it looks like we moved away from modular, which is great. As far as I know, the folks in skate world, when I was talking to them, all concrete. Are there grants for skate parks was a question that I had. potentially. I know X Games, ESPN's property does a lot of skate stuff, and there are big names that they're associated with that might be interested or might have organizations that give grants for these local communities to get people into skating. We already talked about the bridge trumping other things, but you already worked that out. So dog park, mentioned to him on the way out. I wondered if there was a local logger potentially that could do a selective harvest for the acre-ish that we need to almost clear, but keep some trees behind. And they could either donate that and take the wood and do what they will with it. Provide a fair market value for the wood that they actually harvest, or some other arrangement. I don't know how that works for the town. So if it were a personal property, it could work. If it's a town, there's some nuances. So those are the thoughts that cross my mind. It'd be a donation to the town as well, that service. So it would shave off whatever that overhead would be. Those are my comments. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks.
That was a dense meeting tonight. So kudos to everyone who stepped up and had all those that work to present. And
Well, thank you for joining us.
now to what 10:30 almost. Thank you.
And
Thank you.
Terry McNabb.
Go ahead, Terry.
Terry McManus, 169 North Street. I had some comments on the tax abatement. I'm going to hold those off for later. Just want to thank you all for your hard work tonight. It bodes well for the future of our town that you people are so committed to work through this, the things that need to be worked through. So thanks a lot.
Thanks, Terry.
Thank you very much, Terry, and thank you for attending and continuing to contribute. We appreciate it. Any other comments, public comments now?
We had one thing for the zoning. So Jason Guidone again, 94 Cohen Road. We have 3 candidates for the zoning. The next RTC meeting is the 24th, which you meet prior to. Do you need us to do anything for that? Or are you satisfied with the folks who are interested in the zoning to reach out and just have conversations? Didn't really feel like there was closure on that particular item because it was a kick down the road to the next meeting for you guys. That's before our next meeting for the RTC.
Yeah, the Board of Selectmen generally doesn't get involved in town committee things, so that's, you guys got to figure it out.
Figure it out. I already talked to the department. Thank you. That's it. That's all I got.
Thank you. Don, anyone else for public comment?
That's it for now.
Okay. I have a motion, please, for 13.
Motion to adjourn.
Adjourn
Thank
at
you.
10:24 p.m.
Thank you so much. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you for your patience as we work through this, and thank you. And obviously, we went way over, but we covered quite a bit. And thank you to the town, as always, for your preparation and helping us address a myriad of items that are important to the town and moving it forward. So thank you to the town and the town staff. Have a good evening, everybody.